So this is the 2022 Stampers Anonymous Halloween release. And I say Halloween, but Halloween and fall. So before I get started and talk about the stamps and stencils, I want to say, because I say this every single time I do a Stampers Anonymous live, even some other lives, I do not draw. I don't draw. I have ideas, and I can curate ideas, and I can curate collections. And I license all of my art. I license art from other artists that can draw. And what's really interesting is, sometimes people understand that dynamic of the industry and sometimes people don't, but you kind of have to think of it as like, for my brands, right? The Tim Holtz brands, let's just say for Stampers Anonymous, I license my idea to Stampers Anonymous, who manufactures these products under the brand. Or I license an idea to Sizzix for dyes or Ranger for inks, so that I'm licensing the idea. Then there are people out there that just draw, they paint, they do whatever. They don't have any products. They don't want any products. They love the art of it. And their business is simply drawing or painting or sketching and selling or licensing their art. And so sometimes you will see art from certain things. Sometimes it's paper, sometimes it's stamps. You might see that art somewhere else, right? I know we've seen everything from when we did the costume party for Sizzix, people saw those characters like on cheese balls at Costco last year, cheese puffs or something. It's like, this is your art. It's not my art, it's somebody else's art that I license, but I try to license it for a product category that I've not seen it in. So if you see any of these images and you're like, oh, I've seen that on paper or stickers, whatever, I've licensed mine, and I'm just hoping that the person that you saw it on licensed theirs as well, because I think it is important to support the artists for their talent. So just want to be very, very clear about that, because I do love it. And the other thing to note is that many times when I'm curating sets, they're not all from the same artist. That's the thing that I love about doing stamps for Stampers Anonymous. I don't necessarily license an entire collection from someone and put it on the same set. I might like this image from this artist and this from this and this from this, and I just have that kind of vision of how I want to put it together on the set. So let's start with the sets. We've got 5 cling-mounted rubber stamp sets, CMS, right? Cling mount sets to talk about. We've got 3 layering stencils and a set of minis. There are no element stencils for Halloween. We will have some for Christmas, but not for Halloween, just the regular and the mini. So here we go. All right. So this first one, this is Leaf Prints 2. And I love this set because I love the whole idea of these kind of realistic leaf prints. And these are, again, I licensed this. This is a photographer that photographed real leaf prints. And I love the aesthetic of these because I like the boldness of it. I think they're great for a lot of different techniques. And this is Leaf Prints 2 because if you did see the Distress mica stain, right? I used this set. This was the original Leaf Prints. And I've been waiting for this artist to actually release another series, and they did this year. So I was so excited because if you look at the numbers, I mean, we're like almost 200 sets apart from set 1 to set 2 because I really loved the aesthetic of these. I love the scale of them, and I wanted to create some different ones. What's really great about this is that these would be great for stamped backgrounds, stamped cards, using it as a watercolor technique. Of course, we used it when I talked about the sprays. You can stamp with sprays, you can stamp with ink pads, you can do watercolor techniques with these. And this is what's nice about having a bolder stamp design, right? Because it will transfer more of that ink or colorant onto your substrate, right? So if you're not familiar with stamping with stains, like these are the mica stain, check out the Distress Halloween live that we did 2 weeks ago. Really cool. But another thing in addition to stamping, and if you don't have stains, you can also just take your ink pads, your oxide, your mini cubes, or your regular Distress, ink them up, spritz them with water and stamp them, and they make beautiful watercolor. But if you are into alcohol ink, these are also some of my favorite types of designs to do alcohol lift with. And the reason is because the image is very bold, but also has a large enough gaps to really make that cool definition with lift. So for example, these are just some alcohol ink backgrounds that you can create. Now these of course are on Yupo. You want to make sure that if you're going to do lift, you do it off of something synthetic. You can't lift off of glossy cardstock. It needs to be something synthetic, and Yupo is great for that. But you do your alcohol background if you're going to do alloys or mixatives, and then once that dries, you ink this up with alcohol lift ink, stamp it, dab it. If you're not familiar with how Lift Ink works, just search on timholtz.com Lift Ink and you'll see some videos. But take a look at how great those stamps are for lifting through backgrounds. And these could be backgrounds that you love, or in this case, backgrounds that I loved part of it and I cut them up, right? Even some where you have some white space. It's really cool. Or ones like this one that you absolutely didn't like. I didn't like this one at all, but as I mentioned, I save the stuff that I do. This one didn't quite turn out because it had like a lot of lines in there and little skips, but take a look when you do the Lift Ink. Now to me, this background is completely saved and perfect for either a card panel or maybe I would cut it up for collage. But do you see what I mean about that design? That leaf design is really perfect for this technique because I think also of that saturation with alcohol inks. So if you're trying to look to do something different with your alcohol ink backgrounds and you work on Yupo or any synthetic substrate, try out alcohol Lift Ink. And really with the stamp sets, it's really, it's great. And another thing to know about Stampers Anonymous, right? They don't retire things like other brands. So, you know, even though this was 200 sets ago, it's still available. So if you like this idea and you love the collection, because to me they do have something different, right? Like that fern. I think we even did that last week, didn't I? I couldn't, yeah, see, I couldn't not do it. Beautiful, beautiful, beautiful. So sometimes you'll see, again, images come out during a season, but they have use throughout the year for other things, because although these are kind of fall, there's some leaves in there that would be great for, say, watercolor flowers, and then you've got some rose leaves or anything like that. So the first set, Leaf Prints 2, all right? Then next up, and you've seen a lot of sneak peeks and people talk about this one. I do love this one. This is the Scarecrow. A really cool set, really fun. I love the Scarecrow. Some people found him scary. I didn't. I found him actually quite whimsical. He doesn't show any teeth, and I like that. I love the little sketch raven on there. I love the little sketch illustrated moon. We've got these little flying bats. Cool cornstalk there, going different directions, and also not just different directions, but different scale and different kind of bend or shape. And then we've got some text, right? By the light of the moon, happy fall, something wicked this way comes. And this font, well, this font is the same font that we did for Noteworthy in June. So same size, same scale, everything. So if you have this set and you like this font, I really wanted to carry it through for the seasons. So you'll see it in a couple of sets for Halloween, and you will see it in a couple sets for Christmas, because it really does play nice on so many different scales, from cards to tags to junk journals. So it is that same exact font and point size, right? But really cool detail, great for coloring, great for layering. You're going to see some really cool cards. I can't wait to take a deeper dive of those. I like him. I think he's really great. This is another one. This is fun. This is called Unraveled, right? I think this mummy is really great. This started out as a watercolor, but with the help of Chris, he actually helped me get this to a place where I could send it to Zach. So see, teamwork makes the dream work. But turned it into that illustration sketch. I do like that. I love this little pumpkin bucket. It is scaled that he can hold it in his hand. You're going to see some cards where you can use the bucket in his hand. I also love webs. You've seen throughout the years, I love doing cobwebs and spider webs, but I try to do different ones, right? Sometimes it's a background, sometimes it's really drippy. These I really like specifically for corners, right? You can see just kind of a corner web that can go any position of a card, right? Or you can stamp it in a circle to kind of create a really unique web frame. And then there's this one with those drips coming down. And then you're also going to see some bats. And these bats are two different scales. And you're going to see why in just a second. But I love the flying bats. And I think that they have potential for many different things. And then we have Trick or Treat, Happy Halloween, I'm Here for the Candy, of course, Story of My Life. But in the same Noteworthy scale and size of font. So let's talk about the bats, right? So the bats, I really wanted to do something that would work with the moon mask, right? The moon mask is a mask that we did last year where you get 3 different size solid circles and 3 different circles that layer on top of this to stencil and create a moon. And again, we demoed this. There's other demos from last year, but we demoed this in the Distress Live 2 weeks ago for the Distress Halloween of how to create this cool eerie effect inspired by Stacy. But the reason I wanted to do the bats, besides to me that they were scaled in proportion to the art in the set itself, right, is that if you did have the moon mask and you were looking for ways to use it, the large bats from Unraveled are to scale for the largest moon in the moon mask, right? You can see just how perfect they kind of curve around that moon, right? Very cool. Then on the medium one, you actually have options. You can still do the large bats for that medium moon if you want to kind of cut them off, meaning if you're working on a tag, you can start off the edge and go off the edge. But it also really works well for those smaller bats. If you want to create kind of that forced perspective off into the distance. So this is the same size moon mask. This is the medium size. You could use either size bat. And then of course, if you like to do smaller ones, like maybe you plan on doing a die cut or other stamps, you can see how the small bats are perfect scale or proportion to the smallest of the moon masks that are in there. So that's really when I was designing these to not only be to scale for the image themselves, is I really wanted them to work perfectly with these moon masks because it's great. So yeah, some people, you know, you might just be like, okay, forget the mummy, forget the scarecrow. I just like it for the bats and the words. There you go. That is, to me, that's justified validation of those sets. But really wanted to point that out because when you see them, see how cool that is? Totally next level, right? And we'll talk about this in a minute. When I work with this, one thing to just keep in mind that I like to do this with sprays. I love to layer all of the different sprays on the top and then do some stenciling. But pretty cool effect for these sets, besides just the great characters that, of course, you're going to see. All right. So that's the Scarecrow and Unraveled. Then we get into a beautiful one because I love vintage. I always love vintage. This set is called Exquisite. And what's really interesting about certain sets that have floral elements, right? Like Dearly Departed, we did one that has like a really creepy face with the eye. That's the card that I showed that Sharon did. But it has this really great flower that I see all year, right? Cassie Lynch, I think that might be one of her favorite flowers. I see it all the time. And so whenever I'm doing something Halloween and I find a floral that just has a little bit of a creep to it, and this isn't super creepy, but it kind of is. It's kind of, I don't know, I just looked at it and I saw this vintage kind of Victorian haunted looking thing. I wanted to create this set. So even if you're not into Halloween, it is a beautiful set. It does have this wonderful vintage letterhead, right, for mantles, costumes, and millinery. Just great, from established 1780, and then just some script because we could never have enough fill in the blank script. And I love just kind of that little X there and just all these little pen marks and drips. Again, it gave it a little bit of a little creep factor. But one thing to keep in mind whenever you see a stamp like this is really remembering how you can use a stamp like this, something big, right? So I just wanted to just quickly show you some visuals. So this is going to be just like an A2 4 1/4, 5 1/2 piece of paper, just so you can get the idea of the stamp, because the stamp is designed big and I wanted to design it to give you as the maker the flexibility to use the stamp and really change up how it looks. So this is if you just took the stamp, you kind of laid it on its side, you had it go off the edges of the card. Obviously, if you were going to do a slim line, you would have more space, right? More space for this particular image. But then you can also just use part of this image kind of coming in from the top, right? So maybe you have another stamp that you want to use here, or maybe you have a different sentiment, or who knows what you wanted to incorporate. Maybe this is just a background that you've done that you plan on inking or covering a lot of it up, and it just becomes really beautiful, right, for this background, right? Then, of course, we have this one where you can take the same image, and I'm stamping the top part here, and I'm stamping the bottom part here, right? So you can see that it comes into the card and just leaves this nice little break. Again, this could be a background. This could be for a sentiment, right? And then if you don't want to leave any space, you just turn that one a little bit more. So the top, if you look at the top image is the same. The bottom image, the only difference is that you just turn the stamp a little bit more. So that's what I love about kind of that arch position. I'll kind of give you the visual, right? So if I'm stamping, right, so let's just move this. That one's going this direction. This one, you just give it a little bit more of a turn. And so that just becomes, to me, a visually completely different, because this leaves me an open space where something I think needs to go, right? Maybe that's a word, a verse, something, okay? This is a background. So that's just about stamping this way and stamping this way with the same image. So that's what I'm saying. When you see a big stamp, don't always think that you have to just figure out where to stamp it. You can, it's beautiful, right? mean, look at that. You could even do that landscape style card and stamp there. And if you wanted your verse over there, you would just turn the stamp this way and then you'd have your opening here. So there's a lot of potential on a stamp, and sometimes just seeing this will help something click, right? You might have seen a lot of big stamps in the line before and you're like, how would I ever use this? Remember when I did all those glorious stamps, those massive ones that took up an entire set? And people were like, what do you do with that? And when you learn to use like parts and pieces, it's stunning. And even if you wanted to use less because you wanted more real estate, that's why there's all these little pieces. So you could stamp that from the edge. That could go in from the edge. That could go in from the edge. You see what I mean? You have little bits that you can even create a border all the way around of these little elements. So that's the beauty of this particular stamp set, okay? Very, very cool. So that is exquisite. And of course you could stamp the text through the background, the ledger, all of that. I agree, Edith, it is like 4 stamps, but sometimes if you don't really see the breakout, it kind of hurts your head to say like, wait a minute, where did you get the 2 stamps from? It's the same, but that's why having that shape is really important, because it does help you with a lot more organic movement instead of it being a complete linear stamp. All right, so that is exquisite, and I do believe it's exquisite. But then somebody might say this is exquisite, but this is Gothic tapestry. I love to always look for different type of art for Halloween, and skulls, very, very cool. But this one really spoke to me because I love the fact that it had just a little bit of some detail, a little tapestry throughout the skull. I also love this outside, right? This outside that has almost this kind of lacy effect. And you could see some cards, I think even Kubert was doing some where you could just use that part, right? So if you're inking this up on a card, because you see how it's all faded away, right? The outer edge is all tattered, the outer edge of that whole stamp, okay? So if you didn't want to use a skull on something, look at those cool tapestry edges you could stamp on a card. You just don't ink this, right? You don't have to worry about masking all that. If you don't put ink on this part of the stamp, it's not going to stamp an impression. I mean, I don't care if you want to mask, that's fine. But keep that in mind that if you just added a little ink to that corner and stamped it, you're going to get that corner. And because it's already a faded design, you don't have to worry about creating a harsh edge. So sometimes when I'm designing, I'll go in and erode some of this stuff digitally, right? Because the art itself was very clean, very cut. So I do modify it if I have a different idea for how I want it to be used, right? Then we've got some cool vintage music and some great text. I can't ever have enough text, right? So just something that's a little bit bolder, a little drippier. I don't think you could ever have too many handwriting sets. They're fill in the blanks. Some need to be longer, some need to be shorter, some need to be taller, some need to be whatever. I think it's great. You're right, Beth. Wait till you see some of the colors. It would be beautiful, beautiful for a Dia de los Muertos. I was going to say Day of the Dead, and then I was going to say Coco, and my whole entire brain just short-circuited because, well, I'm fueled on candy this morning. All right, never too much. All right, beautiful. Then, probably not enough, I think that's what it is. Then we'll talk about layering stencils, and these are always fun. I've done very traditional Halloween designs in stencils, so if you're looking for skull and crossbones, again, we did that in the distress demo, or pumpkins, or Halloween words, or Gothic phrases, or bats, I have those in stencils. And so I'm always looking for something a little different that also has a little creep. These, I think, are self-explanatory. This one, you might be like, what? Like, what is that? So let me just take you through. Now, all 3 of these stencils come in the regulation size, and they also come in the mini set, right, where you get 1 of each of these. Layering stencils, to me, are never designed for background stencils, although you could use them. It's really about putting an element wherever you want. So that's why they're this shape of the tag. What I like about this particular one, again, you can use that part, and it could come in the top of a card. And you can have that one coming in a different direction at the bottom of a card, or coming down from the top of a card versus coming up from the side of the card, right? You guys kind of see that. Same thing if you're doing some slim lines. I think this is great not only for Halloween, but I think this could still be beautiful if done in soft pastel colors, even though it's got these great thorns, because roses do. Cool for texture paste, crackle paste, inks for sprays, all sorts of things. I love this damask one. It's just big and beautiful. And thank you, Matt, for figuring this one out because I loved it. It has a lot of little pieces, but I wanted those pieces to be large enough that if you were going to put paste through it, and you'll see from the makes that you could use paste in there. And I think that that is really important to remember, that when you're choosing stencils, Obviously, depending on your medium, you want to make sure you have large enough openings if you plan on putting a thick medium through that. And then we've got this guy. So I've done a lot of different shapes, right? I've done dots and circles and dashes and plus and minus, but this has a very rough, sketchy look. Now, the reason I wanted to do it in this fashion is because sometimes I just want a cool, grungy polka dot background for Halloween, right? So I like that I could mask this off. I can put just like a Post-it over it or some cardstock, and I could add some dots in like orange and black on my background. Or maybe I want to do some X's, so it was very easy to mask. And again, going in with your blending brush or ink brushes, you can add some X's, or same thing with dashes. They could be horizontal or vertical. So I decided by designing it this way, you could cover up what you didn't want, and you could easily do a background. So if you're going to do a card and you want all polka dots, you would just stencil, stencil, stencil. And if you wanted to keep the spacing the same, right, you could just put that, line that up with the row that's already inked and just do 2 at a time if you wanted to. Many options for creating this, but I liked it. I just love really, maybe you've seen it online and you didn't get an up close look, but that to me is what's cool about it. It takes quite a bit longer for them to cut this out. Obviously it's not a smooth cut for everything, right? But seeing those little details, that's what makes this stencil to me a winner, and having it in different scales, very cool. And the thing to know about stencils, especially when it comes to a stencil design, there's many options for stencils. You can use the positive and the negative of design. So sometimes I will design a stencil specifically for putting a medium through it, and other times I think, wow, but if I leave enough surface space, I can also create a monoprint with it. So here are just some examples of the stencils. I'll just go through actually each design. I'll set these over here one at a time. So for these, I went in and used the new Halloween mica stain because, well, I love it and I can't get enough of it, and I already have my batch to last me 2 years, right? Because once these are gone, the colors are gone, but they're going to be beautiful. So this one is Fortune Teller and Wicked Elixir, just kind of sprayed through, so you can see those beautiful colors. Look at that. Oh, very cool. Through the stencil. Now, if you're going to use sprays through a stencil, and again, if I have time at the end, I might do a quick little demo, but you just want to spray quickly through there and dismount, right? Take that off, get that off, because if you overspray these, especially if you don't have anything underneath them to stick them down, you're going to get a lot of seepage. I don't mind having a little bit of bleed here or there, but just don't hose them down. But what I like to do is that once I lift it off, I will add a little bit more spray to the stencil itself or mist it with water, and then just do a print, right? So take a look at these prints with the same stencil. Look at that. Oh, see, now we're really getting into the dreaminess of mica stain and having those colors in there. What a beautiful background for the card. And all that is after you spray through the stencil, you obviously have spray on the stencil. You mist it, flip it over, make a print, lift it off, and so now you have 2 different backgrounds. Obviously they're going to go different directions because you're reversing that. But I think that even the small scale designs, absolutely beautiful for these patterns, right? And you get what you get and you don't throw a fit, but makes for cool backgrounds, even if you were going to chop these up and use them for cards or tags or anything that you wanted to. But just doing all your color in the mica stain, yeah, it might mud up depending. Obviously, putting purple and green together, you are risking the mud magic, but I don't consider that a risk at all. I can bring on the mud, right? So beautiful scale, beautiful design for the stencil, especially for Halloween with the thorns, right? Very kind of Snow White to me. Then this damask did the same thing, just so you get it. Oh, but wait till you see. Oh, so cool. All right, so first off, let's just take a look at through the stencil, right? Beautiful, beautiful. This is Harvest Moon and Burning Ember. You can see how those are layered over the top. And again, you see all those little spots because I have this in my splat box. I'm just giving a couple of quick passes and you're done. Okay, it's when you get in there and you try to get too close that it floods out. And even if you have a little drip, embrace imperfection. To me, that's like a little flag on the top of the Disneyland castle. I'll call that good. But I love this because these I would still ink blend, I would still splash some water, but just for this live, I wanted to show you the great detail and of course the color. And you can only imagine how stunning these are going to print, right? Because they do print beautifully. Look at that. Look at all that color in there. See? Now you're going to lose a little bit of the detail when you have tiny little lines. That's okay, especially on the minis. You still see it, right? And then you have that. Ooh-wee. Look at that. And because this is sprayed with water, you're kind of getting, see these like little veins? That's from the surface tension. Again, you'll see like when you lift off the stencil, it kind of creates that little suction. And for mica stains, you use that to your advantage because it's going to actually pull that mica together in places. And it's just quite beautiful. Really, really good for this one. And then one that, you know, might surprise you, just the way that it looks. These are really, really cool to spray through because see, that jagged edge, you use it to your advantage. Even with those little stains, it's really nice to have those little drips, but that's part of the design. So having this, I think, already in the stencil really is perfect for any kind of sprays, not just mica stain, but any kind of spray. So of course, this is Iron Gate and Decayed. No surprise there. Oh, look, it looks like a little smiley face. You see that? I see that. I don't know if you can. I do. Cracks me up. I just love how these colors come together, and same thing on a smaller scale, really great for a pattern. So do you have to use sprays? No, you can use any of your blending tools, paste, textures, whatever, but sometimes I think people really underestimate the power of a spray through a stencil, but also how you print them, right? This is just like, look at this. What a great print that is. It's like lightning going through there because you can still go back and ink blend this, or you could have done this on an inked background if you wanted to. Doesn't matter, you could have printed that. But the finish and the color, yeah, that's why just mica stain is great to have. It's just great to have in your stash for the year. It is only out during the season, so you cannot get mica stain and any other distress colors throughout the year. But it is cool because we know now we're building a really nice palette of those. And you know, if you have them and you have enough to get you through every other year, you're set, right? Really cool. All right, so those are the stencils. Those are the stamps. That's the release. And I say we get into the makes. Are we ready? I'm ready. Yeah. I think I'll set these aside. Now, what I've done for the makers, of course, did an amazing job as always. And what I like to do, especially for Stampers Anonymous, is I kind of sort. That's why I took a glimpse. Like I sort them by design because I think it really is important to see everybody's different take or different style on a specific stamp set. Okay, so you can see those. Keep in mind that following the live, all of these cards will be on timholtz.com. So you'll be able to see all of the maker images in the gallery. But of course, follow the makers. There is a maker page on timholtz.com. Follow the makers on social media because they not only post, but many of them share tutorials, and not just on their blog, right? Many of them now are sharing tutorials on Instagram. So if you're not on Instagram, you should get on Instagram because it's a great way that you can get those little 1, 2, 3s of how something is done, right? So this card, Sharon created this using leaf prints too, and look how she used the Distress embossing glaze, right? So stamp these in embossing ink, use embossing glaze to create the resist of those beautiful colors, and then did that wonderful background. Look at that mica stain in there. But I love how those colors pop with that white frame, and then just Happy Fall. So you can always mix and match the sets as well, right? Because Happy Fall is from the Scarecrow, so putting it with leaf prints, it's nice. But I love just seeing those colors and how well they pop on a background. Sharon, you could always count on color, right?
So much color.
And then Paula created these. I love, this is, of course, just doing that watercolor technique, whether you're doing sprays or doing oxide pads. So look at these little envelopes. So these are great for gift cards, right? This is the Chapter 3 collection. This is Collector, that little coin envelope. So Paula just did that over the papers first, and then die cut these and created them. So you get the splatter, you get all those great leaves, all those colors, fronts and backs, right? Then you could stamp Happy Fall. So if you want to send someone, you know, a Starbucks card for their pumpkin spice latte, right, for fall, there you go. Woo-hoo. Or See's Candy. You can take either one. Yeah. Or Crumble. See, the list is growing for snacks. But this is just a really great idea when you want to do backgrounds and you think, well, I'm not really a card maker, or I don't do this. This is perfect, right? This is just taking the craft heavy stock, doing all your stamps. I love how these colors also overlap. That little splattering of Harvest Moon just makes it look like stars. I just love that too. And then stamping those. So another great idea if you're going to do this, you know, for friends, people in the office, whatever. Just always things you can do with stamps, okay? That's important. Zoe with a Y created this, Zoe in Italy. I love the colors and I love the texture. So here you can see that beautiful damask in the background, right? with that cool paste. I love that little bit of, looks like grit paste in the background. And then we've got this inked background there, as you can see, by having some of that text, right, from the different sets. Remember I talked about just random text is a good fill in the blank. But then I love how these are not only part of the background stamped in there, but then also just choose some, stamp them again, emboss them, and fussy cut them, right? Because they're already kind of leaf fragments, you don't have to be super perfect when you're cutting these out. You could even tear them out if you wanted. A little stitching detail around the edge, and just a beautiful fall card with the colors, the texture, and the layers. Right? So great. So when you sometimes think of like, well, how do I incorporate a stencil? A stencil, that's the whole thing about a layering stencil. It's an element that you are layering with, right? It's not necessarily a focal stencil. It's a layering stencil, okay? Yuko created this. Always very interesting when I see different makers pairing up the same elements in totally different ways, right? So here you can see this card that Yuko created. This is using that two-tone wood grain as a card base. Isn't that beautiful, right? That's from the Distress line. It already comes like this with that black and gray. And then a tag. I'm often asked, what do you do with a tag? Well, this is what you do. A tag could be cut, and that could be a background, or a tag could be put right on the front of a card. I love how she incorporated the Happy Fall as the tab, and then just stamping the leaves, doing some different colors with some mica stain, cutting these, layering these, just kind of wrinkling them together and creating this little arrangement on there. But, you know, again, you look at this and you're like, okay, I see the stencil used, I see a similar stamp used. And again, the fact that this and these and this all don't come on the same set, I don't know, just the odds of those same ingredients showing up on different cards from different makers is so cool to see, because you get a different appreciation for that. Looks like a little foundry wax is over the top of this one on Yuko's card. It's nice. And I hope that, you know, when you see these lives, that's what it's all about, is really understanding how you can take a single stamp set and completely change up how things look, or what you can make with it or out of it, right? So Susie created this. This is just a kind of a little ATC card, little art card. So the entire outside of this is done with Distress embossing glaze, right? That translucent, colorful embossing powder. This one gives a great orange peel texture. You can see that the images have been stamped. Again, the leaves, that little handwriting, little extra piece. There's a tab there. Right? I love that she's got the leaf. And if you saw on Ideology, right, she created this cool make that has this little pull tab. So I love how she took that same concept and created it for the card. So there you have it. This could be something that is just a decor piece, or you could add a gift card to the back, whatever you want to do. But she went in with that same technique, right? Of just that embossing glaze is kind of like the rusted enamel. Wear some of that off so it just looks super eroded, and incorporate your elements in the background. But a great fall make, whether you include a gift or not. This is the gift in and of itself, just the art. But this is another way that you can take different products and create a completely different effect using a shape. So this is where all the brands just kind of come together, especially the fact that we're in the final run for Halloween. You can kind of see like, oh wow, you know, taking this and I can mix this with the stains and I can do this with Sizzix. It's very cool to see all those things coming together. And then of course, there we go, that vintage label die. Just neat, right? Very unique way to incorporate stamps, even if it's going to be a background. So Cassie created this card, very beautiful. Again, this is showing that stencil using some Distress crackle paste. I mean, look at how fine that crackle is. But I love how she created the background with that damask. Not just the whole element coming in on one side, but see how she used like parts and pieces? Perfect to do that. And then we've got this great coloring in the background, ink, stain, sprays. We've got an Ideology quote chip there. And then just these watercolor stamped leaves. I mean, it's such a beautiful set. This is what I was saying about leaf prints, where you think, I don't know. Because when you just see them in black, sometimes you think, I don't really know. They kind of look a little messy. But when you stamp with them, absolutely beautiful to see them, right? That is what I love about seeing all these Distress colors come together just so harmoniously. Absolutely beautiful. Because sometimes, you know, you envision fall to be very warm, but seeing fall in that cool palette, right? Beautiful, beautiful card, Cassie. And then Kath created this stationery set, and I think it's just such a brilliant idea that, you know, and I say this many times during live, that, you know, you have to remember not everyone is a maker, right? I believe everyone is a maker at heart, but not everyone likes to make or thinks that they can make. So sometimes making a handmade gift is very, very special. So Kath created this envelope. Looks like she did this by hand. I love that gusseted envelope. Stamped. So look at the background, right? Look at all those leaves and how beautifully muted they are in the background. Then taking, this is a label stamp. This is an older one from Stampers Anonymous. So it's just a set of all these different labels that you can stamp that frame. She's got the leaves, and I love how they kind of come out of the frame and she still cut around it. Layered this over the top with some ribbon, but then inside it's a whole little card set. So again, you're gifting cards and envelopes to someone that they could send out fall cards. So if you have a friend, a neighbor, someone, and you want to make them something, I mean, how wonderful is that? And no doubt probably Kath already has this blog posted as I'm speaking, because that's just how it is. Yeah, I agree. Thanks. They are beautiful. You're right. Isn't it? Tifa, it's stunning. Vicky, I agree. Like, just, it's really beautiful to see how the makes are done, and just how Kath used not only the leaves, but just different stencils, unique stencils, right? Some like with numbers and digits. That's totally right up my alley. A very kind of specimen motivated, right? With the imagery and the text. I just love how these are. And then if you look in the background of these, right? Can you see those specific backgrounds, the dots, the little X's and the dashes? That's where that new stencil comes into play. It is a great, strong element to use. So sometimes when you see that entire stencil, you're like, what was he thinking? It was really about, and see, it's repetition, right? That's that section inked, do it again, right? X, do it again, dashes, do it again, and you can create a background panel. So it really does showcase why sometimes a design is part of a release, because sometimes even with detail, you want those bold patterns to come together, and seeing is believing. That's what the live is all about, right? Gorgeous colors, and just a great idea to think for someone, even down to the detail like on the envelopes, right? This is where that label stamp comes into play, because it's just stamped on there. A little text in the background so you can still write, and then just having that leaf stamp, right? Like, this is the legit stationery, and that's the beauty that I absolutely love, right? And you've got, those are the little vintage label dies, right? And then just the little stamps. Very, very cool. All Stampers Anonymous. I love that. Well, the vintage label die, that's Sizzix, but really a beautiful way to showcase. I think, you know, seeing them all together, that's what I like to kind of give you that little, there we go, give you that little preview reveal of one set used so many different ways. Unbelievable. Yeah, shocking every time, right? I pick stuff up, and that's why I just can't wait to dive into their cards and see what I can discover and pick out during live. That's the best part. Okay, next we're going to talk about the Scarecrow, and he's a fun one. You can always tell when the makers really have fun with it, because you get a lot of makes, right? You can kind of see, because they only have to make 2 makes for live, and then there's also a social make. So that's another thing to keep in mind. Anytime we do a live, the makers create 2 makes for the live, and then they have a bonus social make that they normally share the week following the live. So if you haven't been following them, you've missed out like on a bonus Sizzix make or a bonus ideology make. So you definitely want to check it out, because I mean, when you see here, right, like all these different makes, it's pretty unbelievable. So Zoe Hillman created this. Love this card. So you can see in the back, there's that moon mask, right? That big guy. So even though there is a moon, and you're going to see, right, Vicky's card, you're going to see that some makers actually use the stamp that comes with it, but you don't have to, right? If you want something for a different scale, this is where that moon mask really comes in. A lot of cool elements. But I love just that colored Scarecrow. I love how he's cut. There's a raven on his head. You can see how perfect that is to scale with that moon in the back on craft. There's those corn stalks that kind of go, and then you have just those tiny little bats that go with him, because again, those are kind of more proportion because they look like they're in the background with him, and then by the light of the moon. But great detail, great coloring, and seriously, that is, I just looked at that. That's fussy cut right there. No way. But very cool. Yeah, Zoe's quick with those scissors. Look at that. And in there, that involves a blade. So anytime there's like a little island cut, denied. I'm not going to go in there with a blade. I'll barely go in with scissors. That's really cool though. Beautiful, beautiful. Look at the sewing detail. Yeah, I love details of a card, because again, you can lose yourself in cards when you're creating. You can just start with the background and things just kind of come together and you can build. And I also love just seeing everyone's different take on cards. So Vicky created this one. I love just seeing craft. This looks like Uncharted Mariner in the background to me. Maybe it is, maybe it isn't, but I love how it's just kind of this cool bright wash of color. But then we have that moon that's been masked off because that's part of the background, so she did a little masking. Looks like she went in with some decayed because we can see that wonderful shine from the mica stain. And then all of this is done in black embossing, right? So black embossing is always going to make your image really pop when you're doing this, right? If you're ever wanting something to really stand out over a background than just stamped in, right? So there you can see the bats are stamped, which is great because they kind of give you that visual that they're off in the distance. And then you have this where they're really bold and vivid. But what you need to remember on this one, right? These bats are from Unraveled. See, they're the bigger ones, even though it's the moon and the corn from the Scarecrow. That's a thing to remember about stamps. They are designed that you can just use different elements together, but I always want to have a set where if you only have one set, you can still create with it. But it's very cool, very moody. And then there's the corn. Vicki actually grows corn. She sent me a photo yesterday of like corn. Now I get why. It was a very random photo, I'll be honest. I was like, why'd you send me a picture of corn? I get it now, Vicki. She's like, here's the corn. See, I didn't see your card until now. But really cool. And again, fussy cut. And see, sometimes when you fussy cut, like I like the shadow, right? And I also like it when it's clean. Beautiful. But a cool way to use those elements, even if you don't want the main character. That's what I think I'm trying to also remind you of. You don't always need to have the main character when you see stuff in a set, right? So I love this card. Anita created this card. Look at that coloring, right? Absolutely beautiful coloring. All of this stuff, although it looks dimensional, right? Because to me, it looks like it's been cut. This is all totally flat, right? So not only is this colored, but really this is on textured paper. This is on the textured side of Distress Watercolor. So how she's stamping with such detail, I have no idea. I mean, that's some serious pressure, probably maybe double stamping, or maybe doing a lot of detail work, kind of fill in the blanks with pen, because I do see some beautiful pen work in there, and I think that's why her lines look so crisp. But look at all that. You've got the little spider webs there, little bats, the cornstalk, and I also love how that sentiment is cut up, because although these are set up this way, right, there is plenty of space on Noteworthy to go in and cut that up. I think that's really good. Anita said a lot of repeat stamping. It would have to be, but it's amazing, really, because it doesn't look so dimensional. It looks like he's just cut out, and wow, really, really cool. And I love just seeing the ideology paper in the background, right? Those backdrops, the marble, that orange and black ticking. Very cool to see those lines come together. But wow, just the color just pops. Oh, I just picked this one up and I already know who this is. This is Joy. Why? Because it's got something to move. You know, I love the little thinger. Oh, what is this? Oh,
Wobbler.
A wobbler. See, I was going to say warbler, but I think that's a bird. Yeah, action wobbler. I do love that. How fun is that? You know I do. I love a card that moves. I don't know why. It's just how it is. I love the moon going off into the corner, the little corn stalks. Again, perspective. See, you can't help it. You can't. And some people, it's going to make you dizzy, and that's okay. It's making me dizzy. That's what I love about it. But really fun just to see the whole layering of that and to create something interactive, and just, again, how that's going to mail flat, but when they get it, that's just good fun. Good fun. And beautiful coloring. I love the watercolor background. I love just the colors of the Scarecrow. Isn't that great? Good fun. It is playful.
It's so choppy.
It's fun. See, it'll just sit there. This way, maybe I'll just hit that occasionally and you'll be able to see it. Barbara created this. I love seeing just cards with so much different personalities and color. Barbara always plays with bold, vivid colors, and I love that. Look at that texture going through. Those are foiled, right? So using, looks like some texture paste. Could be some embossing powder. Might be frosted crystal even under there with some foiling on there. Love how she just has that kind of gradient color coming out from the moon. Using all of those different sprays, really, really pretty, the little splatter, and then of course cutting this out. So I know a lot of people always want dies for stamps. It's just not gonna happen ever again. So if you wanna cut stuff out, just get your scissors, sit down and have fun, right? We learned to cut in grade school. So just sitting down and doing some cutouts are really good. I love seeing that leafing right there for Happy Fall, and just having the corn kind of coming in haphazard around is great. But isn't that just love the colors of that? Fun card, and just the random little bits of that pattern or texture give it a whole mixed media vibe. Then Tifa, you know, Tifa's always going to be expect the unexpected. She's just going to go for it. And I love the scenes that she creates in her envelope work. So here you can see those mica stains in action, but how she also used that damask to create this really beautiful, it's actually crackled. Look at that. Just notice that. That looks like just cracked candy, but that color, man, that's delicious right there. Yummy. And that goes all the way around, creating that frame. These are old school. This is Ideology. These are the layers, I think, from last year when we did those purple curtains. So great use for that. Tifa, look at the alcohol ink background. I love the swirls of that color. That is magic right there. I want to dive into that sky. And then she's got the bats embossed in the background. And then all of this is all stamped on mica tiles. Oh, look. Okay, I just noticed that. This is the pumpkin head from Unraveled, but not the pumpkin head, it's the candy bucket from Unraveled with the mummy, and she put it on the head of the scarecrow. See, I was short-circuiting for a minute there, because I was like, that is super clever. There, that is great. I'd like to say I designed that in proportion. I didn't, but I'm glad that you figured that out. Very cool to see those little pieces stamped and embossed on mica, and what a clever use. If you have Unraveled with the mummy and you want to change the head to be a little bit more whimsical, because maybe you do find that freaky, there's your answer right there. That wonderful candy bucket just cut off the top handles. What a brilliant envelope card scene, Tifa. Clever, clever, right? Beautiful. That's good right there. And then maybe a stamp set's going to take you like on a story, right? So Nico created this where he just took the scarecrow and he just went to Oz with that, right? Over the rainbow. This is all just detailed work that he did, right? Hand cut these, hand line these, the bricks, and then just taking some die cut letters to create a theme. So there again, you might have an element of a stamp set where, you know, instead of just doing something specifically for Halloween, it might be something of a theme or a design that you like that you can incorporate. So I think that's a clever use of using the scarecrow and creating a totally different scene with him. Then again, just using a scarecrow element, Stacy created these little treat boxes. Take a look at this, little fall treat boxes. Got some candy in there. Just doing these bags. Now, of course, these have still a lot of detail, right? So they've got the cornstalk stamped on them. There's a damask stencil used underneath. Just doing some random stamping with text. But that's a fun thing that you can do with any of your background papers as well, is cut them up into, this is the little gusseted bag. I think this was the treat bag. And then she's got those scarecrows just stamped and colored. So these are things, again, could be teachers' gifts, or could be for coworkers or neighbors. And I think using those elements and just choosing one thing out of it is a fun and very clever thing. Stacey's really been like, she's been doing the treat bag thing. So it's almost like, you know, you can't wait to see what kind of treat bag we're going to get next, because it's always an idea. She did some fabric ones for Halloween with the Halloween fabric. Just really, really cool. And then I've got cards from Tammy B. Now, she created two, and she did tell me a little bit about this one. So I'll just talk about this because ideally it's a very similar layout, but this one does something a little special. So here you can see the card and using the scarecrow. I love how muted these are, like when you're working with different inks, different types of coloring mediums. Maybe you're doing ink for this and oxide for this. It does allow a little bit of that hazy dreaminess in the background. The little haphazard stitchery is very, very cool for the scarecrow as well. You see a lot of stitching on the cards. I think that's really cool. Cutting these out, right? Layering this in a bolder color is what's going to make him stand out on this card. Now on this one, right, a slimline card, again, doing the same idea, doing the background, doing the coloring, doing the layers. But this guy, I think, where do I have to do it? It's his hand, I think. There you go. Take a look at that. Come on. Come on. That is, I know, but seriously, like, you thought he was creepy before. Come on, that is pure creep. And she did say she was going to do a tutorial on that, because I think that is brilliant. I can only imagine Zoe right now just going, okay, I need to light these eyes up. I mean, seriously, if it's either going to move, whoop, jammed up his little wobbler. There you go. Okay. Or light up. Either way, interactive is my jam, right? So you don't have to do the interactive version. Tammy said that's why she sent two cards, so people were like, oh, I can't really do that. You can, the card is just as beautiful, but if you want to throw in a little interactive element for a surprise, right? The whole trick or treat, I mean, that's phenomenal, because those suckers are bright. Very, very cool. I love that. Julie is just creepy at the best. You're right. And it lights up. I mean, these are not tiny lights. These are some special lights. She said she was going to share how she did it because I want to learn myself. I'm going to light some cards up, man. Very cool. But take a look. Let me again, we'll kind of set the stage if I can, right? Maybe I'll just hold this. Boop. There you go. Amazing, right? Look at all these ideas for the Scarecrow, right? And either using the Scarecrow, not using the Scarecrow, altering the Scarecrow, really fun and just phenomenal makes. Yeah, I agree.
That is beautiful. What a
Yeah.
beautiful shot.
Yeah, really, really cool. So I'm blown away again. You know, what have we done? 2 sets and already like I'm in inspiration overload because I cannot believe. Yeah, I think lighting things up, especially when you have that. I got to learn that trick because I'm interactive stuff. I get pretty challenged. It's very cool, right? I love that you guys show the love for the makers. It's really nice because they do. They put a lot of work, a lot of heart and soul into creating these for lives, and I'm so appreciative when they surprise me with things. So Kubert created this card. Love the colors. Look at that background. Look at those beautiful inky colors blending together. Not only that, but take a look at this guy. He's so fun for Unraveled, but look at that layering, right? So he stamped, cut out, and then stamped a second time. And I love how Kubert just went in and cut out some different pieces and just layered different elements. That really gives him a very cool dimensional mummy aspect. And then we've got a little glossy accents on not only his candy bucket here, but also his eyes in there. How great is that card? Ooh, a little crypt paste down here, right? Make it a little bit more whimsical. Add some rock candy glitter onto that crypt paste just to make it a little sparkly. What a phenomenal card. And yes, I am here for the candy. A little white embossing. But yeah, look at that detail. Good. I mean, the best part of this, really, you can kind of cut wherever you want and then just layer. But some of those little pieces, those little nuggety bits, wow, great. Little foam tape just to give it some dimension. So again, as a maker, you get to take your card to kind of whatever level you want to take it to. I think that's what it's all about. All right, kind of do you. So Jen created this. Love that pop of color, that colorful background there. You can see that spider web used in the corner, right? This is embossed in white, so you can either do embossing first as a resist or do it over the top if you want it really bright and vivid. But I love the background, love those mica stains and just how well they mix together. Beautiful color. And creating that mummy, again, fussy cut around. Those colors really draw you to his eyes, those green eyes and his yellow teeth. And there is the candy bucket. And the candy bucket can actually go in either hand. But I love the fact that it just adds a little bit of whimsy. And yeah, maybe you want to throw in some candy corn in there, right? A little ideology candy corn in there. You can slice those in half, right? Make them a little thinner, but really, really fun card. Super, super bright, super colorful, right? Beautiful, beautiful. All right. Then we have this card from Anita. And again, when you're working, and let me see, I can grab her other card. I know it's just right off camera. Let me just try to find it. Okay. When you're working with stuff, right, and you have this, let's just say this formula figured out. Maybe that has to do with how you stamp or the papers you use or your coloring. This is where you can just dive into your stamp sets and create repetition, but actually make something completely different. So when you see the cards side by side, you can pick out the similarities of like, okay, moon background, blue sky, paper background. But when you look at the images, it becomes something totally different. So don't sell yourself out on ideas. Sometimes as makers are like, oh, I've already done that, I can't do that again. Well, why not? How many times have I done ink blending or a spritz and flick or whatever? I mean, for years. And it never gets old if you just create new ways to kind of mix and match your elements. So here we can see that guy, again, the stamping, the intensity of color, unreal. Very, very cool to see the unraveled guy, the little bats coming out. Candy bucket now, again, because this is flat, she did some masking here, right, to create layers on top of things. So if you're not fussy cutting, you need to go in and mask off your images. But I love it, again, paired with the ideology paper and that little cutout, a little bit of white pen for that. He's just fun. He's a funny mummy, really do. And again, seeing him like, you know, stamped and cut, stamped not cut, but really deep. I mean, you can just see the intensity of that, and then stamped and cut and layered like Kubert did, right? So far, just so many different ways to use this guy. It doesn't always have to be. Oh, See, I picked this up again. I know Joy did this, because take a look at this. It's got some movement, right? So now he's got his little candy bucket that's going to go back and forth, right, with the penny in there, just giving it that little counterbalance. But again, fun and whimsy. Stamping on the background, doing some color, do a little wash back there. I think that's beautiful just to see that little light wash of color. Really nice if you want your image to stand out is give yourself some white space, right? Give yourself some of that softer space so it brings your eye right into the middle. And there are those spider webs. This is what's fun about the webs in that specific set, right? I told you they work from whatever corner you want them to work in. You can stamp them however you want. But this is a great card, and I love that. We always encourage her. She's like, well, I'm not going to do all the cuts and the layers. I'm like, but that's the beauty of cards. There should be so many different styles and what you see the images do. And yes, they're interactive. That's it. That's my jam. Now, pairing stamps with dies, right? You can, if you have different dies that you wanted to incorporate your stamped images. Nico created this card. So here you can see the pumpkin duo, right? You've got that mummy just going through these giant pumpkins. Just kind of going through. There's that cut and the layers. A little bit of that rose stencil in the background. There's the spider web. And then an ideology quote chip. So, you know, maybe you don't want to use any of the stamp verses. You want to just use something else because maybe that's going to anchor or be a foundational piece for your card. Go and look at your stash. See what you have and create whatever you wanted to do when it comes to adding these pieces, right? So if you're like, what could I pair with this? I mean, I think he's really great, kind of going through the pumpkin patch, all kind of creepy, right? And just that little bit of rose going in there. So cool card. There you go. Then again, I tell you, I'm always surprised. I'm always surprised when two different makers have very similar ideas, but kind of a different way to use it. So I'll show you the two cards side by side because again, it's bats, text, right? But different elements in the back. So this first card, Juliana created this one. So I just want to like show you just the background, right? That stamping, that kind of messiness, right? Which I love, those little splatters, that little, let's see, that little bit of, can you, hold on, focus. There you go. You see that little shine of the bats right there, right? Those bats, because they're embossed, they're always going to go on top of your background. So if you're ever doing a background like this where you're doing stamping, so this is that floral that I showed you about, but when you drip water on it, right, it really wicks out and just creates a beautiful pattern. There's some of the music from Gothic Tapestry, right? There's that little costume millinery from Gothic Tapestry. There's the spider web that we saw from Unraveled. There are the big bats from Unraveled and By the Light of the Moon, and she just used some gold thread just to kind of create that moon. But when you want something to really stand out over a background, embossing is key. And sometimes we just forget that really simple thing of using, you know, black embossing powder or a color embossing powder to make your image stand in the forefront. But a beautiful use of imagery layered in the background, right? And then Sharon created this card, again inked, but this is the moon from Scarecrow. These are the bats from Unraveled, right? But you can see a little script or text in there in the background. So script doesn't always have to really stand out. It just adds a beautiful detail to your background. But I love just that kind of dreaminess of those mica stains and how they float across. And again, by doing embossing, it's just going to add a little bit of resistance so your color builds up. See how that mica stain kind of pulls up on those bats? Such a great effect, isn't it? Because the embossing powder is going to act as a resist. It's going to be that plastic on there. So it's really beautiful, and the little splattering of mica stains. But I love that. When I was setting up last night, I put them like, whoa, like what are the chances? But they're similar but totally different. And I do. I love that. I love seeing how that can really come to be, right? Then we have this card. Emma created this. So this is always fun. I always talk about Emma, like the size of Emma's cards. I love them. Like they're Emma cards because they're big. That's the thing to remember as a maker. You don't always have to fit to a standard, right? An A2, a slimline, or whatever. Make whatever you want to make. This could be a card. This could go into a frame because I love the dimensional element that Emma created by curling that paper, right? So it just looks like he's ripping out through the front of the card. So that's all just torn, rolled, and curled back just to create that cool effect. There you can see what I was talking about with the webs, that you can stamp them going across. Even though they're a corner, you can still, because webs can intersect to create that effect. I love this little element of hardware. I don't know if you guys can pick that up, but see, that's just one of the embossing folders, just using those little scraps of metal if you have that I think it's the Industrious folder with the little panels, right? You can take that. There's some little hardware heads on there, and then Trick or Treat, because just the touch of the hardware heads just gave it a whole different texture. And then you've got tiny little bats that she cut, made this all dimensional. And then of course we've got some bubbles in there with some moss, because if you've got that little edge, hey, why not dimensionalize it? Really, just really clever, really fun. And honestly, so many of these are like, you just put it in a frame, right? There's nothing wrong with just taking your card and putting it in a frame. Like, here's the card, and you can frame it when you're done. You're welcome, right? So they can still read the message, and then they know they have a great decor piece for the Halloween season, right? Then these last two, this guy graces us for Stampers Anonymous, because this is kind of his wheelhouse when it comes to images and coloring. Alberto created he blows me away every time. His coloring skills are unlike anything I've seen out there. And he also has the ability to illustrate things. So this is unraveled. So this guy is the image. These are not the image, right? Although it would be great to have a candy corn stamp now, but still, looking at him like under this pile of candy corn, this is all stuff that he will go in and draw and color, and just does amazing color blending, because it looks like it's got to be photocopied, but it isn't. It is hand colored. I mean, you can see the detail of that, but so amazing. And again, you can take this, his colors are like, wow. Yeah, I see the chat blowing up, because if you follow him, it's like, it's always surprising. And he has I will say his everyday style is very different than mine. And I love the fact that he was interested in coloring for Stampers Anonymous releases, because he does some really, really cool things. So I just do love all of those candy corns. Beautiful idea.
For you, thinking about your candy corn.
Yeah, that'd be me. And I'd be running away with, yeah. Or this is just kind of me gathering my pile, right? Going around just piling. I'd bury myself in candy corn, because I'd love that. And then from the same set, like, look at this card. Has that candy bucket ever been so cute? I mean, we've seen the pumpkin now be, used as a head. We've seen it used in the hand, but repetition and coloring, come on. Look at how cute that is. And he does all those little sparkles by hand, just a little white pen, but how great are those buckets in those different colors? Right? So cute just to see that. This to me is a brilliant idea for that stamp, right? Going in and coloring with anything, whether you were using, markers, pencils, inks, anything that you wanted to do just to color those pieces. Absolutely wonderful. And you can mix and match your palette. You can do a rainbow, but I love seeing an image used totally different, right? And that repetition, right, Cheryl? It is a great idea. Seeing that in repetition, I was like, wow. Who knew that little pumpkin? I mean, yeah, I wanted him to be a candy bucket, which you've seen, but who knew that it would have so much potential when it comes to working with that? So look at that. I'm trying to, again, fit all these in frame. It's like, I try to set them down thinking I have real estate, and then, well, you never know what's going to happen when it happens. But just really, really amazing, where you can see, that mummy, but also elements of it. So you've got the unraveled guy, but then we talked about having those cool large scale bats, whether it's for a background or the moon. And then of course, just having that great candy bucket. A lot of inspiration for that set. This is why it's important to just understand that even if there's a set and you're like, I don't really think I'll ever use that image, look at the rest of it. You still might not like it, but sometimes there's a lot of potential in a stamp set. And that's why we like to create those sets that you can kind of edit and go, well, I'm never going to use that image, but the other stuff, it's got great potential. So I think that's really, really cool. Beautiful, beautiful, just beautiful, unbelievable. I'm so amazed when I just see how Stampers Anonymous, man, the power of an image, the power of an image. Okay, now we're going to get into the Exquisite set, and really interesting because, again, when I was setting up, like, take a look at this. So far, we've really seen cards, right, outside of the treat bag. But for this particular set, so many different makers like created something different, dimensional, which I found very, it's intriguing to me, fascinating. Like, what was it about that set that kind of triggered a different way of thinking? But I think because, as I mentioned, this set with the florals and everything can be adapted in so many different ways. So Stacy created this set, right? I love how it's paired with a Raven. That is a Sizzix die cut. Cool stick, Stacy, with the moss and how that goes on the card. Take a look at that. And that little 13, that would be from Specimen, right? Little chapter 3, that little number on there. That's really cool. The little buttons, some just tattered lace and worn edge all the way around the card. But then look at the card itself, right? You've got that floral that's stamped with a watercolor technique, right? Inking it up, spraying your stamp, right? Stamping it down, or stamping with stain, either one. But you get a beautiful, there's some mica stain there, so you should probably stamp with mica stain. Just some beautiful colors. And then there is that letterhead that I said I love the typography of it, right? Going across. But then it really becomes the background. If you think about that, the stamps have become the background for this foundational piece. So using your things, yes, you can stay in the stamp world and just do stamps. There's nothing wrong with that. But stamps are also just another great tool to use with other creative tools that you have, like die cuts, like your embellishments, like your bits of fabric and paper and all sorts of things. I mean, right? Like each one of these are they're art pieces. And Mr. Stampers Anonymous is lucky enough because all the makers donate the cards to Ted, to Stampers Anonymous, because when he travels around to shows, if you ever go to a show where he is at, you'll get to see the actual makers makes that they do for that brand in person because he has them. So thanks to the makers for always being so generous in giving those to Stampers Anonymous after the live. It's really nice. There they go. So Cassie created this. Look at this. Look at how beautiful this stamp set is with paper dolls, right? Where you can take those florals, create that edge. So you've seen by taking that stamp that you can just stamp parts and pieces to create a completely different wispy, airy look of that image. There you go. That's a cut flower right there, kind of in her hand. There's the paper doll. I love that. Best costume ever. And then there is that text, that letterhead. But a great way to, if you love ideology, if you love paper dolls, to create a background with your stamps and then add an element on top. And maybe that's the thing about this stamp set, because it doesn't have a specific character, right, like a mummy or a scarecrow or something like that. The fact that it does become more background element just makes for beautiful cards, right? Zoe with a Y, Zoe in Italy, created this. I love the kind of mixed media approach for this. There again, you can see a tag in use on a card. But it's really interesting because the floral is stamped on the background, right? And there's that little stencil right there. Looks like some foundry wax in there. It's stamped, and then it's stamped again, and it's kind of like lined up between the tag and the card base. And then some of the other elements are stamped and cut out, right? And I love, this is from the sticker book. Love that beautiful portrait. And then, of course, using your clippings. So there again, it doesn't always have to be everything in the set. It's taking those pieces and saying, okay, I want to use this. I want to pair it with ideology. I want to pair it with Sizzix. I want to pair it with ideology paper dolls. But very cool to see the different approach to this. There's some of the text in the background. You see how it shows up, right? When the light hits it just right, it's got a little oxide in there. And then there's that background. You can't really see that image well, but I can see it in person, but it's embossed in there to create a cool resist. But again, those neutral colors, really fabulous for this set. And then you say neutral colors, and Kath says, no, let's brighten it up. Let's create art with that piece. And I say yes. So here, this is a background panel where she stenciled through with that rose. Look at that. Beautiful texture all the way around to create that frame. And then she has a panel. So this is a hardcore panel. So these are the alcohol ink hardcore panel. It's like, they come in different sizes. These are through Ranger, but the substrate is actually like a vinyl, if you will. It's not really, it is a vinyl, it's a plastic, but it allows you to do inking, it allows you to do lift ink, but it's on a hardboard panel. So it does become an art piece. And that's where she mounted that onto the board. But take a look where I love this, Kathy. You did alcohol ink on the background, right? Those beautiful bright colors. Did a little lift ink with that text. You see that white ghosty text in there? Then she's got some rubs. So that's little ideology rubs right there. Then some stamping, and then more stamping over the top, right? Little bits of rubs. Just a beautiful, cool art piece, and just in such a vivid color palette, right? Having those greens. But this, I think, is maybe what has inspired people to utilize things. And I found it really interesting, by taking that stencil and creating the frame. And Keisha created this bag. Now, it's not Halloween, but this just proves that things don't always have to be Halloween, right? So she took that rose stencil and colored this in beautiful, bright colors. right? So Keisha, just this pencil bag is just a cloth, a linen bag, and how that stenciled in all those bright colors, limited edition. So this is a great example to show that you can get things for specific seasons and then use it for all different uses, all different elements, right? Look at that stenciling job. Beautiful blends right there on the bag. And then limited edition, that would be from Noteworthy. So it is nice to see, you know, taking those images, right, the little similarities and mixing it up and using it different ways. Susie created this. This is an etc. tag. So these are also done by Stampers Anonymous. It's a laser cut paperboard, but it's a great substrate to take all sorts of things, inks, collage, embossing, you name it. But you can see again, you know, the makers that use this stencil, how different it is, right? Cat's border, Keisha's bright layer, and then Susie creating this one with the black, right? That black embossing just gives it a really cool gothic look. There's a paper doll. This is embossed with frosted crystal embossing powder, so that's what gives it kind of that matte, kind of gritty, sparkly finish, a little frosted, crystally look. And then Mischief, and then just a little flower. This is stamped on fabric, and then layered over the top, right? So just think that to me is what makes working with things really fun, right? You can take any of your sprays, any of your stamps, any of your elements, and you just start building. You start building and mixing and matching and kind of doing, I don't know, just doing different things. I love this etc. tag that Zoe did because again, it's telling a story. So here you've got etc. Now, if you're going to sew, obviously this isn't sewn through the board. That's not going to happen. But you can still work on paper like Zoe did, right? Stitch around there and then glue that on. But I love this panel. First I'll kind of show you in the back because we've got that great damask. Look at that crackle paste. Hold on. There you go. It's going to focus. Take a look at that. That is cool, cool crackle. Then we've got the paper doll with the little masquerade, right? But I love this little salesman sample. So the little hanger right there, right, that she created, love that. And then we've got just that little stamped linen with the bats because it's costume and millinery. So he's selling, you know, like the linens and again, the whole story. I think I'm just kind of going in Zoe's brain. Oh my God, look at this. I just noticed it. Look at that little skull, right? So she's taken the ideology skull. Now this is the mini one. So this is the older ones, not the one from this year. That's why I know Zoe has quite a stock of skulls through the years. But she cut off the back, you can see that. And I love that little mask that she put on him because it is the whole masquerade costumes. That is brilliant. And then you've got those bats flying up. So those are the larger scale bats from Unraveled. Then you can see the text. So see, these are the kind of makes it, it's like, well, I don't really make cards and I don't really, you know, do paper crafts. This is what that's about. You can take images and incorporate however you want to and then tell your story. Look at the script back there. It's cool. And I love, I don't know if you can see that, but there's like that little white in there really makes those words pop over the background and just a little mask. There's that X from the stencil. See, they can just appear. So when you see the little X's and O's and dashes and you're like, what would you do? Just when they appear in your art, they become just random bits of goodness. And of course, the ideology of Paper Doll, very, very, just a clever story overall, right? That to me is what it's all about. It's just a clever story overall. Then Emma created this one. Again, it's interesting because now we're going to like etc., 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 but totally different, right? Completely different look. So Emma created this one. Again, we're working on the etc. tag, so it's thick. It is stitched, but stitched is done on the paper and then put down. But take a look at the background because the background is done with that exquisite stamp, right? Where we've got the florals in there. Done again and cut out. That is a Sizzix wreath. That's one of the funky wreaths, I believe. Then we've got the machine heads, just those larger pieces on there. We've got the paper dolls and then something wicked and then the two X's in crackle. But again, isn't that interesting? Like, you know, Zoe used the X's here, Emma used the X on here. Here we've got the damask, the bats, but really the focal point is on the text. And then here, the focal point is on the florals here. It's so cool to see the versatility of a single set and how a maker can just take you on a whole nother journey and story. But yeah, all of those florals just cut and wrapped around, but how they go over this neutral backing, because you can see the detail of that image, right? That's beautiful. That's cling mounted rubber right there. That's going to be the detail that Stampers Anonymous brings, is that. And then we have this large, beautiful, etc. tag that Paula created, right? So there's a scale. So etc. comes in many different sizes for the tags. There's even tags that are bigger than this, believe it or not, that could, hang on the wall. But I love the background because, again, Paula created these beautiful elements with that black image just as the background, right? Then it's got decayed mica stain, I'm sure, because that's a new favorite of Paula's. Take a look at this. This is done with foundry wax, right? So she's got some paste through there, some grit paste, and then some foundry wax. Many of the makers share great tutorials on how this was done. And then paired with one of the Ideology portraits, right? Here you can see that quote chip, and take a look at this, right? There's the fringe. Isn't that beautiful? And look at just that little touch of gold on the edges. So this is the new Ideology paper fringe, and I love how she's just dipped the edges in a little gold. Isn't that? Because it's a fabulous anchor for her. Little string right there. Again, there's more of those flowers, but now they're stamped and colored and cut. Oh, there's even the droplets from Ideology. Even a little mummy cloth. See, because Ideology is like Paula's jam, but using imagery to support Ideology, very, very cool how they play. And the color palette, also beautiful. These clips on the top, these are also Ideology. They're vintage clips. They come in a set of different ones, so you can just clip those right onto the top. But beautiful, just try to put all these here. What a beautiful, different look or take on that set, right? Really interesting that we saw completely different kind of makes, but exquisite nonetheless, right? Very fitting for this stamp set name. Love, 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 right? So that's why, I really see Exquisite just being one of those sets that you're gonna use all the time because of that floral, because of that text, and it has a beautiful, beautiful image to it. All right, take these up. We've got one more set to go through. All right, set these down. And we are going to get into our Gothic tapestry, right? This guy, and some amazing coloring and great ideas, because let's face it, this set, he's big. That image is really, really big. So how the makers kind of approach that is quite unique. Everyone had a different adaptation when it came to working with this. I do love seeing, like, I'll just hold this up just so you can see, like, there's so many different styles, but again, the scale of this, just so you remember, he's pretty big, but you don't have to use all of them. It's cool. So this is a card that Barbara created. You can see a lot of that coloring went in. Done using, you can use mica stain. You could even go in with the crayons, because the crayons are going to give you that beautiful shimmer and more intense. So that's done, I'm guessing that's done with distressed crayon. That would be my guess, because of how intense that is. I love the background, but I also love that it's layered, right? So you've got two stamped images and how they line up right there. Very cool. Again, Ideology quote chip, a little bit of mummy cloth, but beautiful colors on there. And I like how just the detail, that floral element is what's done on a different background and layered, and then his teeth. It's great how that is colored. All right. Then Anita created this. Look at that metallic, right? Embossed. So this is embossed in black. I'm guessing it's embossed. I don't know. It could be embossed in black, and then I think it's embossed in black, and then it has metallic rubbed on to it, but I could be wrong. But that's what it looks like to me, because it has a beautiful kind of Baroque look to it. I love the colors of that. I love how those are colored in, because again, embossing is going to create, well, this looks like, yeah, it's embossed in metallic. Yeah, I think it is. Embossed in metallic and then distressed in black, maybe. I love those colors, because if you're trying to color in detail, a lot of times embossing will kind of create a well. So even if you're doing markers or even liquid watercolors, it's great. But look at all these other layers, right? Because if you see the image, that it doesn't have all these extra flowers. So now taking those other elements, right, and then cutting those out and layering that, I think that's really beautiful, because that's from Exquisite, right? But look at the detail in the background, right? I talked about those flourishes in that open space. That open space really gives you the ability to layer and add some other elements to the background, right? Then this was cut around and stacked and layered. Wow, so cool, right? So yeah, it's embossed and then cut out and then stacked. You see that? There's the dimension right there. Beautiful, beautiful, beautiful. Just ideas, ideas, ideas. Yuko created this card. I love just how it's just very black and white right there with just little touches of color in an area. So you can almost see it as if it's like developing, right? So there's that image, black and white, and then you can just see how it shifts to color, right? Isn't that clever? That's very, very cool just to leave an element just totally clean because it brings your eye in there and then it just kind of warms it up as it goes across. So things to consider, just different ideas. And I think that idea would work with many different types of stamps, because I know often, like I said, everyone had a different approach to something so large. And it's very cool to be like, okay, I don't have to color the whole thing. I'll still stamp it, but then I'm just going to do part of it. And it gives it a completely different look, different aesthetic, doesn't it? And there you can see that text from Exquisite works really great scale-wise with Gothic Tapestry. So don't be afraid to mix and match your sets, okay? But speaking of pop of color, Jen is like, here you go. Let's bring this out. I mean, take a look at that coloring. That is so electric, just super vibrant, where the whole image is just stamped in black. So you have that black and white, and then just going in and adding such a beautiful, rich, vibrant neon look of color. I mean, that's a beautiful card. And then this, Own Your Dream. So again, somebody that likes skulls, because there's people that just, that is a great aesthetic, whether it doesn't always have to be Halloween. And I know people kind of think that, but you know, Own Your Dreams, that's from Noteworthy. So you can take any of those other sentiments and mix it with this image. It's a beautiful, beautiful representation of that. And I think also having it in that bright pink is very, very cool, right? Gives it a completely different aesthetic from what you've seen so far, right? Beautiful card, Jen. I love those colors. Are like, wow, wow. All right. And Tammy created these. So this is kind of a resist technique. And I know Tammy's going to be sharing her cards because she has notes that she's going to be sharing her techniques. But really great resist techniques. This is stuff I did, I think, even in the Carol Duvall days, right? Where you're embossing and you're ironing it off. But a great use of that, because sometimes you think, you know, an image only has to go one way or the other. It could be lip ink, it could be resist, it could be so many different aesthetics of this. This one is like a reverse image. Look at that. So that is like that. That's going to be interesting to see. Maybe that was done on a gel plate. I'm not sure. Could be. But I love that it's the reverse of that. And I think I did see something on Instagram where, you know, Tammy's like, practice makes perfect. Maybe she did several of a certain technique. Can't wait to check it out. But here you can see how beautiful this image is, the detail, whether you're stamping it or whether it's going to be a resist. Mixing it with colors, taking those floral elements from the images. And then here you can see how these cards were using I think it was the tiny text from Halloween. Maybe it was last year, right? Where we got that whole set of all those great little tiny phrases, but Lost in the Inky Darkness, I know that's a favorite, right? And then Treacherously Supplied by the Imagination, and then just some stitching. But very cool cards, totally different look for that image. Amazing, amazing. I think when you start seeing the cards, that's when I think you see the image differently. At least that's what I always hope that these lives really spark. That sometimes you can see an image on a set or just a visual online, and it's like, okay, that's a stamp. But seeing it used different ways, magic. So Tifa created this one. Look at this metallic magic, right? Beautiful, beautiful look on metallic craft stock, stamped and embossed in black. I love just that beautiful copper coming all the way around. And look how she took that main flower and stamped it a bazillion times and cut it to create that. I mean, that is a lot of work, but it's totally worth it because it's just stunning. It really looks like it's done out of metal, right? Like this is just a metal sculpture on the outside. So again, sometimes you can focus in on one image and just ink up that part of the stamp, 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 and then you've got all these layered pieces. That's the other thing. As I mentioned, it's going to be surprising to see how the makers use an image differently. And so far, well, clearly that has happened. But take a look at the envelope, right? Oh, wow, it even goes all the way around. Oh, here, that's very cool. Whoa, fabulous. Look at that. That whole little swirly swish. That is amazing, Tifa. Wow, that's so much work. Look at the background when we have that. I'm like, look at the stencil, and we've got the mica stain over the black, just quite beautiful with all those colors and shine, and then whoop, whoop. So beautiful. Incredible, right, Mario? So beautiful.
Incredible.
So beautiful. Wow. Wow. Amazing. All right. We still have more. I'm just like gushing over this. Keisha created this. Again, I love where makers just choose to kind of highlight different pops of color and create the card. This is done on the two-tone wood grain, right? Then we have that great skull Something Wicked This Way Comes, a little ideology right there, and then just those pops of color. But you can see by just choosing which elements to color, your eye can just do the dance over the entire image, right? So beautiful to see how that color is. And also just the edging, right? Some makers just cut off a little bit, some left just that tattered edge of the image, some tucked it underneath. And here I just love seeing that like almost fragmented edge, right? Where just that paper is just kind of chipped away, because it doesn't really have a soft torn edge, and I think that's what I find really interesting. It's very fragmented, so it's almost just like it's a shattered piece. Beautiful card, Keisha, just cool. Love the use of color and just how things are done, right? To me, it's just about how things are done. So Kuber created this card. So again, look at the pops of color. This one is done under a layer of, looks to be rock candy, because we've got that really thin, translucent crackle finish over the top. Again, cut out and layered over the background, but beautiful tapestry background. And then we have that text, again, fragmented. This looks like it's done on collage paper, right? Stamped on little bits of collage paper. Undertaker, again, from previous year sets, because you can, right? You can take old and new and mix those together. That little bit of stitching, but beautiful. I love the finish of that, because I think that shine of that crackle, that rock candy, really just gives a whole different aesthetic. Again, scale-wise, when we talk about bigger pieces, nothing wrong with sending a big card, right? But also it could be an art piece, or it could go onto a clipboard, right? I love to collect vintage clipboards. I have many of them because it's a great way to just clip on a card for display. It doesn't always have to go in a frame. That makes it really a unique way to display it. But quite a cool look. Look at all these skulls, right? So good. Juliana created this. Again, I love just seeing all the different layers of this, because the images right here, these are all flat, and then we just have the texture from the numbers. These are the element stencils, so remember the numbers that we did for our everyday release, where those packs of numbers, this is where they come into play, especially for the season, right? 31, 13, 25 for Christmas, or for birthday. So when you ever wonder, like, what would I do with those element stencils with the numbers? This right here is what you can do. So you have all those different colors. So here you can see in the back, this is about layering your images. Right, I'm going to give you an up close look at that cardstock, because all these are stamped one on top of the next, right? And or stenciled. So the orange, that's the stencil. That's going to be that damask stencil. Then we've got that purple layer. That's going to be the florals from Exquisite. Then we've got the music in green. That's from Gothic Tapestry. And then we've got this black right here. That's also from Exquisite, that millinery. And then we've got the skull stamped in black, with all of that. Isn't that wild? That you can incorporate so many stamps, one on top of the next, as well as stencils. It's just about choosing the right colors, the right kind of mediums, and the right kind of inks, right? Not everything can build on top of one another, right? Sometimes it's distress, sometimes it's archival, sometimes it's something waterproof. It just depends on what you want to show on your top layer. And then of course we have the glaze over that for the 31, so that really sticks out over everything. And then I love just the haphazardness of that text. Something Wicked This Way Comes, right? So beautiful. All right, let's make room for another skull. So these are bigger cards. We got it. We got it. Look at that. All right, we have it. And then I saw this one. This is the last one. I put it in the bucket, and it just made me smile, because I'm like, of course. Of course, Vicky's like, I'm not going to use the entire thing because I don't have to. And that to me is what's so cool about every maker staying true to their style, right? From vibrant and vivid to creating, beautiful works of art with envelopes, to playing with technique, to doing embossing, layering, coloring. And then Vicky just does her own thing. That's the whole crazy chick. She just has a whole different imagination. And I love this. I love everything about how not only big and creepy that skull is, but it has a completely different look to this, right? By eliminating that floral, right? And it's just masked off when she stamped it, right? Just inking that portion that you want. It gives it a very creepy, piratey vibe to me. And I love it. I couldn't love it more. Also, I'm sure that little stitching going across, that adds to it. And then we've got, these are the clipping stickers from Ideology. And then if you look at the background, you can see that those roses are almost kind of like a bleached out water over that inky craft. Just a completely grungy vibe to this stamp, right? Crazy. Yeah, it's very piratey, right? That's what I saw. I'm like, ooh, creepy, right? But all of these, I'm like, he's not creepy. It's actually quite beautiful. That's why, this particular set was like, it's definitely more Gothic tapestry look. But then you've got that. So pretty amazing, right? When you look at this stamp, and I hope that, again, if you've seen any of these images, you still might not like it after seeing the makes, but hopefully you can at least appreciate the versatility of an image, what can be used together, and how things can really be kind of combined or used and mixed and matched. That's the power of an image or a tool that we have as makers, right? Whether they're stamps, whether they're dyes, whether they're embellishments, whether they're inks, whether they're products, because you've seen so many different pastes and textures and embossing and mica stain and all of those great good things so far. So those are the Stampers Anonymous sets for Halloween. Let me just bring those back in one more time. We've got our stencils, we've got our mini, and then our stamp sets. I'm going to just try to take out the right leaf print. There we go, because that leaf print 1 is already out. So there we go. There's our 5 leaf prints 2, the Scarecrow, Unraveled, Exquisite, and Gothic Tapestry. So these are the cling mounted rubber stamps from Stampers Anonymous that have been shipping. They've been shipping worldwide since, I believe, last week. Many retailers have them. Many people already received their orders. But I also want to talk about some other stamps. I normally don't in the live, but I want to, because I think they're worth seeing and worth knowing about, right? So these are the ones that are available worldwide. But I also do an exclusive line of clear stamps for Joann Stores. And Joann Stores, it's a wonderful chain store, but I like to do something unique for them for the season, specifically when it comes to stamps and stencils. So these are clear stamp and stencil sets. This is what I do for that store. So if you're looking for clear stamps, if you're looking for something a little different, these are great sets. These are seasonal. I do some everyday stamps for them as well, but these are great. They do sell in-store and online. What these are, they're really always kind of a mixture of imagery from some older sets, right? Some of them are the entire set, some are little parts and pieces, and they're always a different scale, okay? So these little clear stamps, right? Little different scale. I like to mix and match on this stencil. So if you love clear stamps, this is the only place that I do clear stamps for. Everything else I stick to red rubber, because that's what I personally use, but I know that there's people that love clear stamps. Stampers Anonymous makes these as well. They do a great job with clear stamps. So here you can see those bold frights, and again, the mix and match of a lot of older stencils. People call these Franken stencils, but we do them. I like just kind of giving a little variety of that set. But these are great from a scale perspective. If you have like chapter 3, this size imagery is really great for those. I think it's great. And it's a good value. I think these are like $15.99 or something like that for the stamp and stencil set. And it's worth talking about, right? Can't just all be about you. That's the important thing to remember. So here we've got, I love that skull with the casket. A lot of these smaller images. It's really good with Condemned. And then we've got that stencil set there. This was a favorite, that haunted house, and on the set it's actually quite big in rubber. So all these images also come in the rubber stamp sets from Stampers, but these are just smaller and clear. I love a little bit of that text. So see, this would come from a couple of different sets that I just mixed together, because sometimes I want to do this. So when we talked about leaves, so although these aren't the same leaf fragments, these are a little different because they have a little bit more detail in there, but these are a nice and kind of splotchy, and they've got some great fall quotes with a beautiful stencil in the background. And then, hey, a favorite. Remember these, Mario? The blueprint sketch, right? Mario's son drew the entire blueprint series, but it's nice to see those still coming around for clear. So this is a great assortment that we did for the Halloween season, available at Joann. I love that. I do. All right. Think we have time? What do we have right now? Yeah, we got time for just a quick little demo thing. Any questions that I missed, Mario? I think I was kind of going through. A shout out to all the makers for creating really just such amazing work. I think it's been really good.
Really good. You kept up on everything.
Just beautiful things. I think that's the thing to remember. All right, just gonna do, let's see, what do I want to do real quick? I think what I'll do is I'll share the moon real quick. Just talk about this, and then we'll just do a quick little stencil. Well, it won't be much. I'm not gonna. Yeah, I don't want this to become the norm. Sorry, because it's really about the product release. But I think sometimes when you see it, especially if it plays into that particular release, then I'm happy to kind of take you through it. All right. So there we are. Nice, nice. Okay, there we go.
You know, set.
I'm just gonna, I'm gonna grab a pair of gloves for sure, because things are about to get a little inky. I'm gonna use some mica stain. So I gotta glove up, guys, because, well, just because.
Because.
Well, just because I want to do that. There we are. I agree, Joanne. The makers just, they do amazing job. And I mean, Stampers Anonymous did an amazing job creating those designs of stamps and stencils. I love
kidding.
it.
I mean, those guys, they really went out of their way to get everything out and on time.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Okay, let me grab this. All right, let me grab some sprays. So for this, I've got, I'm going to work with Black Soot Distress Spray Stain. I'm also going to do a little old paper oxide, just because that's kind of a little formula. And then I'm going to take some mica stain. I'm going to stick to this year's, but I'm telling you, it's really hard not to take some jack-o'-lantern in here from last year. You know what? I'm going to do it because I can. Because I have them, so I am going to mix and match. I've been trying not to, but you know what? It is what it is. I can use a little bit of both. You do you. Okay, so whenever I work with mica stain, I like to have them laying on their sides at first, because that's where the mica is going to go onto the side. If you find that they leak wherever you live, first just make sure the lid is on. I've not had any stains leak on their sides ever, but just kind of keep that in mind. But it's going to help the mica just kind of mix up quicker. Same thing with oxide spray, but storage-wise, you could store them right side up. But see how the mica is living here right now? That's because they've been laying down this whole time. It just makes mixing them up much quicker, okay? The moon masks, we did these last year. They're really cool. I just keep mine in a little Ziploc bag, and I have one of those wire loops. You also get these from Stampers Anonymous. That's how I have all of my stencils, right? I love to have all of my stencils this way. I just rub a little bit of black paint on the bottom and wipe it off so it goes into that edge, because this is how you can index them. If you use the index on timholtz.com, you can go by number. So that's what I do here, and it opens up. These are great little cables, but that's how I have my moon masks, is just in a little Ziploc bag, so I can have all of them. I punched a hole and they hang with my stencils, because to me, if they're not there, out of sight, out of mind, right? So we don't want that. Then I'm going to go in and just talk about how I get started. Again, I've demoed this several times, but I like to work with Sticky Grid. So this is a product that I do with Sizzix that are normally done for a die cut machine, but you can use stencil spray. There's all sorts of things that you can stick down the stencil and the mask with, but I just use Sticky Grid because it's thin, it's very lightweight, it's easy to take off, but whatever you want to do to hold your mask in place is good. So all three sizes of masks come in the moon mask. I think in the Stamptember set last year there was a little in-between size which worked, but these are the solid and the layered pieces. So what I'm going to do for Sticky Grid, I probably should have done this before gloves, but we'll see how this goes. There we go. I'm going to take a craft pick. I'm going to peel off just the release paper, and let's just do the big one. Why not? So I'm just going to stick this down anywhere on one side of the mask. And I don't really have like a right or wrong. Sometimes I'll just look at it, and if I like the way it's laying, like if it has a little bit of an arch, then I'll put it on the underside because I think it will lay flat. See how like that has a little bit of a curve? I wouldn't want to stick this side down because to me, I think that lip is going to be off the paper. So that's how I normally decide, because people ask, like, how do you know what side to use? I'm like, I just kind of look at the plastic and see how it's behaving. And if it has a little curve, I put it on the opposite side because to me, it just seems to grab better. Then on these, like these little inside pieces, you don't have much real estate. So you, especially if you're going to ink, you only have this much real estate. So if you have different size circle punches, right, use a different size circle punch you don't need a lot of tack is my point for these. So I just use, on this big one, I could use the same size circle, but just so you guys can see, I'm just going to stick that there, just in that spot. So I'm ready to go with the mask. And you can do this for all of them, but the Sticky Grid doesn't stay on there forever. Okay, it's something that you're going to want to use, reuse, use it until you can't, and then you just replace it. Okay. So what we want to create is just essentially a background, and you could do this. You don't have to do this with sprays. I'm just doing it. You can do this with ink blending. You can do this with your ink pads. You can smash it down. There's many ways, but this spray technique that Stacy did, I thought was just cool. It was just different. All right, so we're going to take a splat box because I'm going to work with that. You can see really building up to some nice fall colors, hasn't it? Okay, paper towel. Paper towel is going to be key for this. And then we'll just use a tag. It could be a card. It could be whatever you want for your background. And I'm going to start with the solid piece. So again, I'll place that sticky grid down. I'm just going to peel off that release paper. So craft pick is always good to have. You can place this wherever you want. So I want my moon just to kind of come off the side a little bit. How about that? That's going to work. I'm not really concerned about it being totally sealed, okay, at this point. But here's what you need to remember. When you're creating this background, if you want different colors to show, right, don't hose it. Just don't hose it, okay? Because I think what happens is people just get all and they spray a bazillion things, and you just don't need to. One, your product will last a lot longer, and two, I think your background will be a lot more unique. So if you want this to be bold, you're going to want to go in with some black. Black soot is, to me, kind of the magic of this particular technique. That's all the black I did. 2 sprays, 2 little misty sprays. It's not a lot, okay? Then I'm going to kind of pick my blend colors, and for this one, I think I will do a little bit of purples, but I'm gonna do these guys, okay? There we go. We're going to shake those up. So this is Fortune Teller and Hocus Pocus. These are the purples from last year and this year. I think that'd be great. Quick shake, so I don't have any sludge at the bottom, because remember, it was already mixed. It mixes quick on the side. And same thing, I'm just going to go in the splat box and just make a spray. Maybe a little bit down there. Shake this one up. Make a spray there. That's too much. I don't care. I'll be okay with it. But really, that's what you would like to avoid if you can. So here's what I'm going to do next. Once I'm done with my spray, I'm going to do the dismount. So I'm going to pick this up, right? I'm going to just grab the mask, because you can, and you're just going to pop that off. Okay, so this is still wet. That's why I like to wear gloves for this. You could print this, you can do whatever you want with this, but all I'm going to do is just flip it over at this point, use that little dot from the sticky grid, and just wipe off the excess spray, because my plan would be to use it again. Right? Now if I'm going to switch colors, you can easily clean this off, because now I can stick this down onto the non-stick part of the media mat. I can go in with water if I wanted to. Let's just use a little bit of that. And I could clean this, or you can do your lasagna pan. My point is, it's easy to clean, but don't clean it if you're going to do more of the same color. Only worry about cleaning it if you're going to change colors. Now the other thing that's important is that I took this off before I go in with heat. Okay, because if you forget that step, these are not heat stable. And I have gone through a couple of sets, I'm not going to lie, because I've been so eager to dry something, or like this, I added too much, I'm like, Ugh. So I went in, and then you have things going everywhere. So what you're going to need next is you're going to want water, and you're going to want a heat tool, and I prefer to have a paper towel. Now it could just be the one that I just used, that's fine, but you'll see what I'm going to do in just a second. I want to take a heat tool, and I want to start drawing this outline just a little bit, because to me that's going to give me a little bit of identification, but not totally. Then I'm going to go with my water and just start going to town, and you're going to see that color start working its way in. Now the more you get the water in, see that? The more you can push that color in. So use your sprayer to kind of force that, start drying it a little bit, and then when you're happy with it, hit it with that paper towel really quick, lift it off really quick, and then finish drying it, okay? Now the reason I do that is because I still want that little light edge. So see, by heating it first, I got that outline that you can see. See that? You can still see the circle. By dabbing it, I also took off all that really dark ink that was there, right? If you didn't, it would be really, really saturated. Now I'm gonna go in and do some editing, meaning I'm gonna take my spritzer, and instead of spraying it, like I did there, I'm going to slowly squeeze the trigger and create those drips, right? Those little dribbles on the background. Those dribbles of water, what's going to create, I think, a whole different effect on this. Going to go back in, use paper towel, heat tool. So I'm going to dry a little bit, and I'm going to dab it off. See? I'm going to dry a little bit and dab it off. So why are we drying it? Drying it is what's going to give it the outline. See those little outlines? If you don't use a heat tool, you don't get the outlines. Maybe you don't care about that. That's fine. There we go. So there is our background. There is our moon. Now, don't worry about this, right? If you wanted your moon to stand out more, right? then you would do less water on the inside. So let's do it again, just so you can see that, you know, I'll show you on this one. Like, I really love when the moon is just kind of hidden under things, because we're going to still add a detailed layer. So I like that. Some people want it to be like, you know, look at me, and that's fine, right? You might want just it to be more visible, but my point is there's no right or wrong. So don't freak your freak. And I'm not done with this background yet, but we'll do the other one and we'll do the final steps simultaneously, okay? So let's take this one, and heck, because I've cleaned it, geez, I might as well use another color. There's no point in cleaning if we're not going to switch up the colors, right? Okay, so for this one, I'm going to start out, again, a little bit of black. Now, does it have to be black? Not really, but to me, black is what's going to add the moodiness, the undertones. Maybe you want to use hickory smoke. Maybe you want to use another color. Really, it's completely up to you. Oh, I think this one I'm going to do some green. So I'm going to do a little Wicked Elixir, and I'm going to do a little Decayed. Now, again, you can shake it like a bell, or you can shake it, but if you find too much is leaking out of the top, then just be careful how you do that. Again, just going to spray. There's a little bit of green. That's better. Notice I didn't blast it like the last time, so that's the thing. You kind of want to keep things going. You don't want to get there and do what I did on the last one, where you just kind of hose it down. There's a little Decayed. That's really what we want for our background. We want it to be very speckly fleckly at first. If you see those big kind of bullseyes, and that's really why I got so much color coming up into the moon, but I'm okay with that. But that's really why, so much ink, right? Same thing, we're going to lift this up, we're going to grab this, and we're just going to pop this off. Right? You might want to, who knows? You might want to print this. You do what you want to do. For me, I mean, I'm all about using some of the ink, but I also just don't want to sacrifice what I'm working on just to try to save something that I really didn't care about. Sometimes that happens, right? We get more about what we do with the leftovers, and then this sacrifices. So here we go. We're going to first dry this, okay? We're just going to dry this to start, because we want to create that outline. I want to create that outline, okay? I gotta have a paper towel handy. That's important to me, just to have something for the dismount. Then I'm gonna spray this, and it's really the amount of water. You're gonna see what's happening. See, it slowly creeps in, but the closer you get, the more that starts to go in. There we go. I'm happy with that. Touch it with a paper towel, lift that off, keep going. So this is really what I took off. Not much. I don't want to take everything. So notice when I put the paper towel down, I didn't put it down and burnish it. I didn't want to take off all the color. I just wanted to take off any of the big puddles that would eventually go into the moon. Does that make sense? I hope it does, but that's really what it is. Then I'm just going to take my water, and there's many ways to do this, so you don't have to do it this way. This is just the way that I like to create this effect. Now I just went in with water to add the drips. I'm continuing to dry it just to dry some water spots. Now I'm going to blot those off, because to me it gives the background some contrast, some light and dark. And here's our second one, okay? So there's our second one. Got a little bit of ink there. Dab it off. So beautiful. We can see the mica, but you see what I mean? Like that, just that little bit of black gives moodiness, but it doesn't overpower. And then we've got this one. To me, this is just a cloudier night, right? Sometimes you see the moon and sometimes you see part of it, but we're not done with it yet. So don't call it out yet. Next, I'll just take whatever paper towel I have. And I only put a paper towel in the splat box because sometimes it just takes up the overage, the overspray of things. Now I'm going to go in with a little old paper oxide. This is what's going to give me just almost like a little foggy look. So I'm just going to grab the edges of this. So I'm holding the sides of the sprayer with my middle finger and thumb, and that's going to kind of create some resistance. So you'll see when I spray it, it's almost going to like spatter out. Do you see that? We've got some big splotches. That's what I want, okay? So you can see that. Then I'll dry it just a little bit, but not fully. And now I'm just going to dab them off, okay? So even though it looks really dark, don't freak your freak. All that's going to do is just kind of create, I don't know, a little bit more mood. A little kind of foggy. And then I want to create some, almost like stars, I guess. So I'm going to go into Harvest Moon. Same thing. I'm going to grab the neck of the bottle. Now, if you're not comfortable with this, use a splatter brush. A splatter brush will be fine, or you can unscrew this and you can take the little tube in the spray and you can, you know, kind of flick the tube, whatever's going to work for you. But we just want to splatter on some of that yellow. And then we're going to dry this one, right? So that yellow mica stain is what's going to give us kind of a starry effect. I agree. Old paper it's like, it's amazing. Because sometimes you need that little cloud, that little bit of, a little fog, right? That's what we do. For fog's sake, that's what we do. I love having a little bit of fog because especially for Halloween, it's just dreamy, super dreamy. All right, so we're gonna take these out. I'll set this aside for right now. I'll probably come back and do another little bit of splat. So these are mostly dry. You can see there's a little bit of that stain that's on there. I'll pick this up and you could dry it all the way, but if it's bright enough, which to me it is, I'm done. I'm not gonna wait. Now paper doesn't have a memory, okay? So even though your tags are gonna curl like this or your cardstock, just bend it the other way. If you have a Mink or a laminator, that's a great way that we can go in and do that, right? That we can take that little element. But see, just look, like what's cool about using all those different mediums, because you might be like, why did you use mica stain and spray stain and oxide? Because then every time the paper turns, you notice something else, right? So see, like when the light hits that, now those sparkle, but now you can see that little bit of old paper that it's just kind of hazy and foggy, but it's sitting on top of the purple. The water is kind of breaking up the sky. Those are very cool. Now we're going to add some identity to the background. So we're going to go in with a little bit of Pumice Stone Distress ink. Okay, again, this could be whatever color you want, and it could be ink or oxide. We're going to take a blending brush because I want to create detail. So a brush is going to allow me to get more into the detailed areas than not. And there we go. I'll take this. I don't know where I thought I had a piece over here. That's all right. I had some media grip. I don't know where I put it. So I'm just going to set this down. I can do without. So for this, I'm just going to place the moon. As long as that little circle can touch, you can turn this however you want. It can go from the top, the bottom, and that's just sticking that down. And then we'll take a little bit of ink, just using the brush. I'm going to ink that up. And I'm still going to hold this in place, and I'll just start swirling that ink down. This is what I love about a blending brush, because I can get a soft blend first with the bristles, and then I'm going to slide this forward to kind of make them a little bit more compact. And that's what's going to allow me to get into those smaller areas without worrying about, changing brush sizes. So if you have a different set of brushes, you might need to change different sizes. But I have not gone back into the ink pad. I've started in the biggest spot direct, and then I faded out the rest, because this is what, to me, is just going to give me more of that kind of dreamier look. Don't worry about this. This easily comes off of your background. So there's one moon. Then we're going to take that, make sure we put that on the side that doesn't have ink. Okay, so for this one, I think I'll go this way. Well, let's see. No, I think I'll stick pretty similar. So I'm going to just kind of follow that little outline. Okay, so on this one, what we can do is, I don't know if I have it on there enough. There we go. That'll be good. What we can do before we do the moon is we can actually create just a little bit of a shadow around it. Now, you might want to go in with oxide at this point. So when you have one of those moons that kind of fading a little bit. In fact, Mario, would you just grab me like old paper oxide, please, from the spinner? Sure. Should be on the second row in with the browns. So this one I'm building a little bit more color because obviously my background is darker. So I'm just going to blend that just a little bit. You could do pumice stone if you see pumice stone.
I got it.
Okay, it could be either one. Just some sort of dirty color, right? I'm going to take my brush. I'm going to go right into my oxide, because if I have ink on there, I can go ink to oxide. I just can't go the other way around. So before I would go back into my distress with this brush, I would want to clean this off, right? Because you don't want to get oxide into an ink, but you could get ink into oxide. Just so you know the rules of the blend. So here I'm just taking a little bit of that and just going on the outside of this moon. And then that's what we get. So see how that just kind of creates that little bit of a glow? Nice. Okay. Still not done. Here's what we're going to do next. Next, we're going to take a little bit of water. I'm going to still do my drips. Big drips over the top. Now, why am I doing this? Because I don't want that blended ink to look like it's been blended ink. I want it to look like it's been part of the background. So paper towel over the top, blotting it off. I'll show you what that does in just a second. Okay. Beautiful, beautiful, beautiful. Again, just drying. So here's what that second layer of water just did. See how it just kind of broke that up? So by adding that, it just makes what you just inked, it makes it look like part of the background. If you don't break that up, you don't have to, but then it really looks like you just stenciled it on the top. And you can always go back and do that. So you can, I look at this one, I think, oh, I'm going to break that one up a little bit more. You can always go back and add water to distress. Wait a second. If you wanted it outlined, you could outline it, obviously with a heat tool, and then just dab it off. Okay. So that's the moon. I mean, the moon is super easy to do, right? It gives you some really great effects, but I think adding the stamped images, well, that's it. So you could do your stamping and embossing if you want, right? So here we go. There's our ink and our brush. Our first two sprays, we've got our oxide, and then of course we have all of our mica stain. But when you're stamping, I prefer to stamp with archival, right? It's going to be oil-based, so if you have black soot or you have jet black or any other permanent, even if you don't have archival, you want to stamp in something waterproof. I wouldn't suggest stamping in regular black soot distress or regular black oxide for this, because we have so many different products on there. We want to make sure that the ink we stamp is going to dominate all of them, and because this is oil-based, oil dominates water, right? It's going to sit on top of it. And that's why when you're stamping, like, these bats really show up. Now, of course, you've seen that you can do stamping and embossing. So if you really want them to shine, you can do embossing. But if you're just going to stamp, right, it's important that you do it. Another thing I would suggest is if you have some type of stamping tool, like a platform or something, you can do repeat images. Like Anita said, these were all stamped 3 times. Right? So I had them in my platform, I stamped, I opened it, inked it up again, stamped, inked it up, stamped, and that's what made these really, really intense. So that's the other thing to kind of keep in mind with it. If you want to grab my platform, I'll stamp while I'm cleaning up. I got to move these out of the way just to show you, right? You don't have to overthink it. And you can just do the big one right there in the gray. It's in that gray, that gray sleeve. Yeah, thanks. Perfect. All right. I'll just take this one. Thank you. Okay, let's move these. Let's stamp. Okay, I'm gonna take that, open this up. Let's see what I want to do. Oh, let's do this guy. Okay, just gonna put that down. I've got some media grip down here, and media grip helps so this isn't even gonna move. The magnets just make it a little bit more secure. And then let's take the image. I think I'm gonna go with the big one. So that's going to be from Unraveled, right? We're going to take that because I just like the scale of that. So I can place that down. So here I'll just make sure the magnet's out of the way. I'll decide where I want that to go. Position that first. It can go off the edge. It can go however you want it to be. Then we're going to pick that up. And we're going to take archival. I'll just move this in frame so you can see. I'll hold this down, right, while I ink, because holding it down is just going to keep it from making tons of noise. All right. When is media grip coming back? Gosh, I hope soon. That's a great question. I wish I would know. We've asked Tonic for months now and no ETA. They say it's coming, but we just don't know when, because I mean, when it was released in April, it was gone in April and it hasn't been back, but it's coming back. We just don't know when. So hopefully before the season, because well, I love to use it, so I try not to torment. So there's my first impression, and not bad. I mean, really, you could be done with that if you want, but I always think if you have a stamping tool, like, you use it, right? So I'm gonna ink it again. We'll go in and do the second one. And notice with stamping, I'm just using pressure. You could use some type of tool or CPR, but I just think if you get in a habit of putting too much pressure down every time you stamp and you CPR your stamps, even with another tool, you're essentially squishing any material. It could be this foam, or it could even be a clear stamp. And by squishing it, I mean you're going to lose the detail because you're applying so much pressure to this that this image is going to distort. So just keep that in mind when you're stamping. You're better off just doing a little bit with pressure than really going in CPRing that thing to death, especially when you have something small. But like, I mean, take a look at that. That's why I said even for the bats, it's just. And so that moon, that extra color, you play to your advantage, right? You don't sit there and go, oh man, I really want it to look like this. Well, cool, the next one can look like that, but this one looks like this. So get what you get. No fit. Beautiful. See, great for the bats. All right, so that one was from Unraveled. Now we'll just do a quick little monoprint now that I got gloves on and I've got stuff out. I'll show you that. That's a fun one. It really is. Yeah, so many just, and these are all cards. Again, chop that off, card, put stuff with it. I really like that surface. That's the mixed media heavy stock. It's just nice. Okay, so let's just say we want to do a print. And I think, why don't we just do this guy? That one's really pretty, right? So you have many options when it comes to doing prints with stencils. And sometimes I will just do a print. I won't even care about a stencil, meaning, I understand that stencils are designed to put stuff through it, but sometimes I just like a stencil for the purpose of printing. And I know that some people will agree with me and some people don't, and that's why you get to do what you want to do, okay? But if you like a design and you want to print, depending, if your stencil doesn't have any writing, you can use either side, right? Meaning I can print and I can have my Damas coming that way, or I could print and do it that way. If you have words, obviously you can only print, you'd need to spray your color on the back to print for your words to go the right direction. Keep that in mind. But anything else, you really have some great freedom, some great flexibility. So I'll just kind of show you the first thing if you were going to use it with a spray. Okay, so I'll keep that watercolor paper. So I'm working on this, I'm working on distressed watercolor cardstock. I'm working on the smooth side. I chose watercolor for this because I prefer how watercolor allows my color to flow better. So you see this movement, that's from the paper, right? I mean, obviously it's the product that's moving, but the reason this is allowing it to move is because watercolor paper is allowing my color to move and not be soaked in. So keep that in mind when you're choosing your papers, okay? So from a color perspective, let's see what we want to use. I think we're going to do a little bit of, we're going to go very creepy on this one. Why not? Okay, we're going to do Hocus Pocus, Fortune Teller, Wicked Elixir, and Decayed. Okay, why not? So take these, give them all a quick shake. Okay. Start with, it doesn't really matter the color, but you really want to be careful with how much you put down, because if things go wrong from the beginning, it is what it is, all right? So a splat box is going to help because I want to keep my distance, and that's really why I like to spray in a box, because you are going to get overspray. The further back you are, the more it's going to spray. The closer you are, the more focused it is. And for this, I like to just kind of spray from the top. So, I mean, my hand is almost even out of frame most of the time. Little spritzes like that through a stencil, in my opinion, is just the way to go. So there's like 2 different purples, okay? Gonna go in with a little bit of green. Spray that. And if you want to get a little close here or there, you take your chances, right? And we're gonna go in with a little bit of Decayed. And it's weird when you're doing sprays because, some stencils will let you, go right in there and just go for it. Detailed ones, you just want to proceed with caution. So here I'm just going to take this, I'm going to lift this up. It's all about the dismount. We want to take that. And this is our design. And I think that design, it's going to dry, but I love that little splotchy look. So we can let this air dry, or we can go in with the heat tool, either one. For right now, I'm just going to set it where I don't put my hand in it. I'm going to let it air dry for a second because I'll show you the other print. So when you're working with this, now you get to just decide, because you don't care how much stuff you have. So if I want like more green, like I can really put some more green there. If I want to add a little bit more Fortune Teller, I mean, you can really go a little crazier if you know you're going to do a print. And that's why I was saying before that sometimes I just want to print where I don't necessarily care about the rest of the background. Okay, so depending on your color, I'm going to get some of that purple out because that's a little too nutty. All right, depending on your color, just for good measure, it doesn't hurt to just give that a couple of sprays of water. No more than just really a couple. The key for this is going to be to take your paper, smooth side up. We're going to take our stencil, we're going to turn it over because we're going to print. Now, this isn't going to rain on your paper. So don't sit there and think that you have to kind of do your thing. Okay, you've got time to just figure this out. So I'm going to place it just where I think I want it to go. But once you set it down, that's it. You set it and forget it. So we're going to set this down. Then we need to take a paper towel. Very important for this step. The reason I want the paper towel is because when I push down, these little bubbles are going to spread out and it's going to want to come through the openings. If you don't have anything to take that color out of the openings, it's going to fill in the blanks. Okay? So even if you use a brayer at this point, that's fine. But you'll see when I start pressing down, that ink that's oozing out from the stencil is quickly being absorbed by the paper towel. So again, whatever's going to work for you, a brayer is fine by hand, but you want something, some type of paper towel or something absorbent. That cloth is not absorbent enough, okay? And you just lift this off. So that's all the stuff, not much, but that's all the stuff that would have oozed into my opening. Make sense? Okay? Then same thing, we're just going to pick this up. You can see the surface tension. You see right there? Like watch these solid areas as I pick this up. This is where that mica stain gets really interesting. See those little striations? You'll see them on my background. It's exactly what I was talking about. So take a look at that. So see those lines? Those weird lines from the surface tension, that's what's going to dry very, very pearly like the samples. So see, by adding that green, that decayed, you got another thing. Now, could you do a second generation print? Yeah, you're not going to get much, but you could. And so now I just throw this in water and we're done. So I'm going to set that down, take the splat box out of the way. And like, see that when I talk about setting in water, that's what I have. I just have just some sort of pan or something big enough for your stencil to go in and just set that in there while the medium's wet. Whether you're doing paste, ink, whatever, you can see that the water will just dissolve that medium. And then all you have to do is literally take this out, rinse it, and then just dab it between paper towels that you can use again and again. Or if you have a stencil drying rack, you can just dry it. But you can see all of that will just dissolve with water. It's just cold water. It doesn't matter if it's hot or cold or warm, but that's what I do. And then I'm not scrubbing my stencils, because that's what you want to avoid. You want to avoid like baby wiping your stencils or scrubbing them, because if you bend them, you know, they get trashed. Okay, so now we've got both of these backgrounds. They're done. I can take these off, right? And we'll just talk about what you can do with them. So drying wise, let's dry. Let's just dry these. Yep. Can you emboss these sprays? You can emboss anything. You can emboss with water. You can, as long as something's wet for the powder to stick to and you can melt it before it dries, yes, you can. So, and I've done techniques where I've embossed with water, I've embossed with stains, but you have to spray it on, put the powder on while the spray is wet, and emboss it while that spray is still wet. So sprays do not have the same ingredients that embossing inks have. They do not have glycerin in them. So if you spray it, for example, and you put your powder and you don't heat it immediately, or even while you're heating it, you can risk that embossing powder just flying off. So are they designed to emboss? No. But can you? Yes. You just have to work quick enough for that all to happen. So as I'm drying it, like see these dark areas, I'm just going to go in and take those off. You're not going to lose the pearl. You'll see that mica that's in there and the mica stains are going to show perfectly, but you don't have to cook your backgrounds if you have a dark spot. So take a look at that. You see what I mean? There, look at that. See all of that surface tension of that beautiful, beautiful background. And then of course we have that wonderful speckly background. And this is what I've shown you before in these samples, right? That's exactly how I did these. But you can also take these to another step, and I'll just show you that. You could go in and blend, you could do all that, but the beauty of Distress and the fact that it's water reactive is that I can now react this more. Some people hate this, some people love it. I think it's really interesting. So I'm gonna start spraying this, and you're going to see my image start to react. It's going to start to wick. It's going to get a little splotchy, but you want to dry it as you go. This is no different than that moon that I just did, right? The longer the water has to sit, the more this color can wick. But this creates a unique effect. You can even go to the point, I'll even show you this. Gosh, I'm going all over the place today. Holy moly. All right. Yeah. All right. I'm going to even take this, and I'm going to take another sheet of paper. I'm going to squeegee that color across that wet, and then I'm going to peel this off. Okay. Right? So this is just a background. This did nothing. But because my sprays were on there and they were dry, that design isn't going anywhere. So it's almost like I don't know, it's almost like a batik with sprays. And I'm getting that like hazy color from the the pearl, but now I'm going to still sit there and go in with some water just to react the background. So what happened is, remember, I sprayed this with stain through the stencil and we let it dry. So it was dry first. Then I sprayed it with water and that got some of the color to mix, but then I just hosed it with water, took off the ink. So I'm already getting a beautiful background that I can use for something else. But now I've got that image that's super dark, but under this like wonderful haze of color around it. You'll see when it's dry. It's a beautiful effect. It really is. But see, some people wouldn't take it that far. Because they'd be like, are you kidding? I just tried to spray it without that ink getting underneath the stencil. Well, we still want that to happen, because if ink got out of the stencil, it wouldn't be detailed like this. It would be mucky. But that doesn't mean you can't ever go back and wet it and play with what makes Distress products so magical, which is most water-based products, when they get wet, they just dilute the color. Distress is the complete opposite. It's like, bring it on. More water, the better, right? Bring your friends and family. But take a look at that, right? We've got a little bit, we got that mica. We've got that fluid color that's almost outlining the design, but we still have that design. It's a stunning background, and you still get the beauty of that. I mean, I knew I wanted to print because it's almost like getting little flecks of color, right? Those little powdered pigments, but you can see that we still get that wonderful fluid look of mica. It's really, really pretty. And this is the same thing. You can leave it like that, but if you don't like it to be so stark, so dynamic, water's going to do the same thing, right? Because we've already dried it, the water's going to do like what it did on the moon, right? It's going to fill in the blanks. Okay, I'm just going to dry it just a little bit because I wanted to create some of those drips. And then I could take another sheet of paper and just make sure I've got enough water on there, right? Because I want to move that color in, and I'll take some paper. So you could use the same paper if you didn't really care to make a background. You could use the same dry paper as kind of almost like your squeegee, but see, you get something really cool. But it's the same idea, just in reverse. So now we're still filling in that space with its kind of counterpart color, if you will, right? Let's clean that off and we'll dry it. So that just takes away the starkness of it. And I think it also opens up what you can do with stencils, right? Sometimes people, you only know what you know. That's it. We don't know what we don't know. But when you see stuff, then you're like, gosh, I don't just need to stencil with an ink, or gosh, when I do a print, I don't need to leave it white. You don't need to do any of that. You can do what you want. But if you're spraying with colors, right, if you're spraying through your stencils, take advantage of the intensity of a spray, because a spray is way more intense than an ink pad. So that's why by doing these backgrounds with sprays versus a blending brush and ink, I'm laying down way more intense color, but I'm also creating some beautiful visual effects with this. Okay, and that's just by adding water, but it's that cardstock that's pushing that water out. Because if I did a paper towel instead of cardstock, what would have happened? The color would have absorbed, right? We know the paper towel is to pull it off. I didn't want to pull it off. I wanted to push it out and create a background. But in doing so, I got two very beautiful backgrounds. But then I have this. And again, you get what you get. If you've got little white space, embrace the space. You're going to have some areas that are darker, some that are lighter. But to me, for me personally, a more usable background than this. This is nice, but then this would need like some sort of a black bold sentiment and be done, because we've kept that cardstock true and stark, which you could, right? So just ideas. I think when you work around with things and you play with different products, and you're not afraid to honestly just kind of let your imagination go, then using different products, I think, becomes the party, right? Taking all your stamps, your stencils, your papers, your inks, your masks even, right? Then you just, gosh, sky's the limit. Between this and all those amazing makes, it's the power of play. That's what it is.